Welcome in to another episode of the Wizard Factory live show. My name is Logan Hart. Today we're going to be talking about some very difficult and heavy topics. This is going to kick off a three-part series about male and female dynamics. The first part we'll be getting into today is about what men must endure. So just looking at sort of the unique challenges, traumas, difficulties that men uniquely face in their lives. Next week, we'll be getting into what women must endure and looking at the female side of their experience. We'll have some lovely lady guests on to talk about that. And then part 3, the following week after that, we'll have all of the guests back on to kind of discuss this roundtable style and really get that dialogue going between men and women. And that one is called Renewing the Vows. So sort of like trying to build, rebuild and heal the connection between men and women, because this is a serious problem, guys and gals. Like, this is seriously crisis mode at this point. People don't seem to be worried enough about it. There's some, I do see a lot of growth in polarity topics and discussing these on some aspects. That's kind of a trending thing in some topics, but it's not nearly mainstream enough. So this is my attempt to try to bring this conversation to the forefront, dive into this stuff, and give a chance for everyone to feel heard, right? From the man's perspective, from the woman's perspective, and then having a literal real-time conversation about how we can deal with and fix this shit, because it's not good. So welcome to the live, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. Make some noise in the comments, smash the like real quick, make some noise for the algorithm, help this channel grow, and more people see this conversation, because I think more people need to see it. So glad you're here. It's going to be a great show. Let's get into it. All right. So as I said, my name is Logan Hart. I'm the host of the Wizard Factory channel. This channel is all about giving you the tools and mindsets to live a more free and empowered life. If you're new here, welcome to our growing community of those seeking self-empowerment, spiritual evolution, and a tribal family. If that appeals to you, consider remember the tribe, subscribe down below, and as for that like button, well, you know what to do.
Smash, smash, smash. Yeah.
So, as you all know, we like to kick this show off with a little bit of astrological weather. Get that nice astrological weather report coming in from Rodney Goodwin. So, without further ado, let's begin that segment now. Rodney, my man, what is going on, brother?
Man, I tell you, I don't know if I could do the segment today, man. It's Mercury retrograde, man, and dude, man, I don't know, man.
Oh, you poor thing,
man. I don't know if I can handle it, man. I'm just like, oh shit, man. It's Mercury retrograde, man.
Listen, boo, just go to Starbucks, okay? Get yourself a nice frap, put on your onesie snuggie, and hang out. It'll all be okay, I promise.
I know, right? Yeah, so we are officially in Mercury retrograde. Fuck yeah, hell yeah, man, yay!
Bring it,
bring that shit on. So yeah, no, man, we 21st it went conjunct Uranus, powerful atmospheric. I could feel the charge in the air, especially after that solar eclipse at 29 degrees Aries. That was all playing into it. And then with Mercury being conjunct Uranus, man, and now we're retrograde. This is the time, where we're going to go introspective, internal, and we're going to work through our issues in context of self-worth, self-validation, and becoming the man and the woman that we want to be, the things that we've missed, the things that we haven't been able to, actually identify ourselves with in context to our knowing ourselves. Now is the time, this next till May 14th. It's going to start to go direct, but there still will be a 2-week shadow period going up to the beginning of June, where it will reconnect with Uranus at 16, 17 degrees, and then it will transit Uranus. That's where we'll get our breakthrough in context to leveling things up with our consciousness, then the aspect of what Taurus actually represents, which is a high level of self-worth and how you're actually seeing yourself as a man, as a woman, as a mage, as a mystic, as a shaman, as whatever energy you're working with in context. So this is a very powerful retrograde. Dealing with the Mercurian energies, we're dealing with internal dialogue, always with the Gemini aspect, left and right hemispheres of the brain, and learning how to balance and bring harmony to our internal dialogue. Because let's face it, that's what's getting jammed. So I want to talk a little bit about this eclipse that we just had, solar eclipse, and where we're going with it. So we started off with a 0 degree new moon in Aries, and then we had a double lunation. So we had the second time that the new moon happened was the eclipse energy in context to this at 29 degrees. So we were full, the full spectrum of the gate was charged with this new moon energy, with the eclipse energy, and with Jupiter setting in the gate, and also Chiron setting in the gate. So very charged energy, expanded energy in context to Jupiter, because Jupiter basically expands everything it touches. And the solar eclipse was squared off with Pluto in Aquarius at 0 degrees. So what was this saying to us? It's saying that this particular eclipse is going to have effect into 2024. It's not going to be just a 6-month kind of effect, which is kind of a normal effect for an eclipse. This is going to go for over a year. Why? Because Pluto will be going stationary retrograde May 1st. So what happens is that when Pluto goes into that retrograde kind of stationary aspect, it's going to pull back into the Capricorn gate again at 29 degrees. So this is going to flux at the gate all year this year in 2024, bringing back this particular eclipse that we experienced in context to our warrior codes, who we are as warriors and this path. Now, Aries can be very like a child. Okay, it's the first gate, right? So it's like, it's like the tyrant, the child not getting its way. It can throw tantrums, okay? Because that's kind of how the Aries energy works. So what's happening is that we're really getting an upgrade here in context to our maturity, because it's squaring with the Plutonian energy. So you got Aries and Scorpio, which are octaves of each other on the solar spiral. So literally what's happening is we're dealing with a power base, because Scorpio or Pluto is the power planet of the solar spiral. All right. So this is the struggle of power on a collective level that we're getting ready to step into on the world stage that we're going to see. Not only on an individual level, like, okay, you can still start to look at the themes going to be, where am I giving my power away as a man, as a woman? Am I allowing myself to be bullied by certain things still with my own internal dialogue? And then that's setting the stage for my vibrational correspondence in context to what I'm pulling in, right? So this is all about making a check in your life this year in context to where your power is lying, where you're putting your mindset, your state of mind, where you're taking yourself in context to where you're putting your consciousness on, okay? Because where you put your consciousness on is where your energies and your power is going to flow to. So this theme this year, in context to this solar eclipse, is going to be all about taking your power back as an individual and seeing yourself in a context of major self-worth. Because dealing with the Saturnian energy in context to where this is at, we're in Pisces. That's dissolving the boundaries, okay, that have been set up for you in context with the programming. So we're coming into dissolving the programming, and then the Aries gate is about finding your identity, yourself. See? So the programs are being dissolved, and then we are now have to take an honest look in the mirror in context to where we're still giving our power away to whatever it is that we're doing, another person, a partner, a belief system, a program, whatever it may be. It's just layered in, right? And so now it's time to mature, because now we're dealing with the octave, the water, the reprogramming, or how water is programmed in context to the Scorpio element, which is the water element, and how we're being reprogrammed, or how we're reprogramming ourselves. Now I'm going to take this a little step further here. Saturn in Pisces. Okay, what is Saturn? Saturn is time. Okay, so I had something interesting I was thinking about yesterday. So time is like a sine wave. It moves in a wave form. Okay, so it has peaks and it has valleys. At those peaks is where manifestation takes place in context to a sine wave, right? So it's moving, right? So when you take the word sine, S-I-N-E, right, and you remove the E and you separate the E from the word sine, what do you get? You get sin. And sin is what has separated us from our own signature energy frequency in context to the programs that have been overlaid upon us to what? Victim and savior mentality. Because it's the sin that separated us from our own selves in context to the programs that have been inverted and put into the collective consciousness, to the aspect of time itself, or the sine waves. And Saturn in Pisces is there to dissolve those programs. See? And literally take us into a place where we're reconnecting the E, which is the energy system that's been separated. So now we have sin, okay? And that's the energy system. We're bringing that E back in, reconnecting it, because we're beginning to realize that actually the sin has been the illusion. And that's Neptune in context to how they've inverted the Neptune energies to the illusions of the program of the religious, governmental, religious constructs that we're living under right now. This is what's happening with Saturn in Pisces. And so the Aries energy then becomes very powerful, because if you take Saturn in Pisces as the first house of context to what's being dissolved within yourself, the second house then becomes Aries, which the second house is the Taurus energy, which is the construct of the 3D world, taking it to the Venus construct of self-worth, self-validation, and leveling up that in context to your mind and your state of mind. You see how powerful that is?
Yeah, absolutely. Love that.
So this is what's going on in context to this solar eclipse, because we're finding our warrior again. And now that warrior is going to come into a maturity, because it was squared with the Plutonian energy in Aquarius, which is leveling up the organic technology that we have right here within ourselves in context to the Aquarian gate. So that's why it's so damn important that you find your Libra or your balance and harmony within yourself, because if you don't find that, you're never going to be able to access the eighth gate, which is the transformation. Think of Pluto like a transformer. So what happens? A transformer, what does it do? It transforms electricity so it can be used, right? So we can actually use the electricity. All right. It's the same thing. And what is the planet of electricity? Uranus. And where is Uranus setting? In Taurus, which is the transformation of the technology, the literal physical body in context.
Mm,
You
beautiful.
see how that works?
Yeah.
So this is where we're at right now. So this solar eclipse, one of the most powerful we've seen in quite a while, and it's going to literally have an influence the whole year going into 2024, because of that Pluto flux at the gate between Capricorn and Aquarius, and your cardinal signs. If you have cardinal signs in Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, or Aries, those are you're gonna feel these, so look where your cardinal signs are in your chart, and look what's transiting those cardinal signs, because that's going to give you an inclination of where how you're going to level up and where things are going to go on a personal level.
Right. And in context to the balance that you're speaking of, this is very important even to tie into what we're going to be getting into here today about, the challenges and traumas that men have endured. These traumatic experiences create a state of imbalance in the psyche.
Right.
It polarizes your brain to a left or right brain executive function. And, to even begin to have healthy relations with the opposite gender, you've got to figure out how to balance that stuff back out within yourself by dealing with that trauma. So that's a big theme of what we're going to be talking about as well today.
Yeah, if you're not in control of your own energy system or sine wave, context to your own, in system mechanics, something this is how they've wrote in, by bringing the dark sorcery in, right, and then connecting it to your energy system to harvest the energy into their grid works, and then bring the physical reality in context to the inverted Saturn energies and the breaking of cosmic principle into the reality field, so things can remain in this chaotic, entropy, chaotic fucking stagnation state on our planet. See, that's how they've done it. So you've got to burn through this stuff so you can regain control of your own energy system and sine wave. See, and it's the sin, that's separated us from our own selves. See, through the victim and savior programming, that you need something outside of yourself that's more powerful than you to save you.
Right. I think of sin as self-imposed negativity.
Same thing.
There's two ways to look at that.
Yeah.
You can see it as missing the mark, is what I believe it literally translates to from like the Hebrew or something like that.
Yes.
So you can try to detach some of those stigmas from like actual religious dogma, and look at sin as just, a behavior that is not serving your highest self. It's doing something that's separating you, like you're talking about, from source, from your higher self, from the best version of you. And then of course self-imposed negativity is more like the religious aspect applied, where you're using that as some sort of justification of lowering yourself, lowering your self-worth, your self-image, and what you're worthy of, what your actual intrinsic value is. And this is again tying into what we're going to talk about here today, is that these traumatic experiences, they diminish your sense of self. They're a penetration of your ego, of your boundaries, and that disrupts your construct of who you are, where you begin and end. And that's where that imbalance comes from, because everything is thrown out of whack from that traumatic experience. And but it doesn't have to be that way. You can heal, you can restore a healthy ego, and that's where that balance comes in.
And
So
that's what the solar eclipse was all about, because the Venus construct is all about self-worth, self-validation, imposing a self-image of power. And so that's why the Venus has been hijacked as well in context to dark Luciferianism and the female Illuminati in context to what it actually in its inversions as well. Because Venus actually runs what we call a geometry of the rose of Venus is a pentagram that it actually does on the solar spiral to make the corrections that have been caused by the inversions itself. See, Venus spins the opposite way. So it doesn't spin clockwise, it spins counterclockwise on the solar spiral. See? So it's giving us a correction in context to the dynamics of the energy system and how it actually works. See?
right.
That's a whole nother subject.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but getting into understanding, this is what that solar eclipse was all about. Finding your self-identity and then maturing, bringing the maturity to it in context to the Plutonian energy.
Love it, man. Appreciate you sharing that wisdom with us, as always, keeping us current on these energies and forces that are at play, and how we can ultimately leverage these things to our advantage and make sure we're maximizing our gains that we're getting from that. So
Yeah, Jupiter is going to be squared off with Pluto for a while, and with Jupiter being into the gate in the gate as well, it's amplifying and magnifying the energy on a high level. So it's really, really actually working to our advantage here to bring ourselves into a place where we really truly understand the warrior that we are, because we've forgotten a lot about, that warrior aspect, just looking at, the whole aspect of what it really means to stand in the face of evil, man. Stand and look at it straight in the eyes and not back down, you know?
Boom. Love it, man. So real quick, tell folks where they can find more of your work and follow you
I
and
think
how
my
you work with your,
I think my link tree's in the
yes,
comments.
description below.
Yeah, and then also you can get a hold of me at Hardcore Productions on Facebook, hardcoreproductions9@gmail.com. My services page is hardcoreproductions.com. And then you can also, if you want to hit me up on my Rodney Goodwin face page on Messenger, you can get a hold of me there as well. I tell you, my forte is transit readings.
I can vouch for that for sure, man.
So I can see, I have a gift to be able to see on the wheel transits that are going on. Just the other day, somebody hit me up, and I'd given her a reading, and I saw, because I looked at it, and there was a financial thing that had set up with her. And I said, look, in a few months, you've got a windfall. There's a windfall there. Something is coming. I don't know if it's an inheritance. I don't know what it is. She emailed me back or texted me back last week and said, you're not going to believe this, but I just got a $17,000 check in the mail from
Wow.
something that I totally wrote off. It wasn't going to happen. And it says all of a sudden it opened up, the gates opened up, and the check came, and I can't believe it. She goes, I just can't believe you saw that.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are the type of things that happen when you could look at how the transits are setting up and how things are happening. So that's my forte, guys. So if you need a transit reading, hit me up.
Do it. All right, everyone. Thank you, Rodney. Make some love. Show some love for Rodney down in the comments. We are going to get ready to start the topical discussion in just a minute. We've got Will Keller waiting backstage to join us as well. Always bringing that heat. So, but just real quick before we get into that, a couple of quick housekeeping announcements. I encourage everyone to please follow the Wizard Factory on all social media platforms, whichever one you prefer or are on the most. I am fairly active there, as well as my own personal page as well, so that you can get more kind of short doses of philosophy and spirituality throughout your day. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just want to take a quick moment to offer you a special gift. It's the free initiation package download. This is a free download package that includes the Toolbox mini course. I created this package to equip you with all of the essential tools you need for any type of energetic or magical practice for anyone serious about their spiritual development. It's comprised of 3 parts: the circle, the breath, and the voice, where you'll learn how to cast the Circle of the Magi, various breathwork techniques, including a powerful guided breathwork meditation, rune galler, and more. You'll also get access to the Inner Sanctum, our private Facebook group and Discord server, as well as some Wizard Factory wallpapers for desktop and mobile, all for free. And for those who've already seen this course, I'm happy to announce that this is a brand new remake with better production and even more information. You can find the link to get yours in the description below. So check it out, and let's get back to the content. All right. If you're interested in that, there's the QR code, nice and easy and convenient for you. Just hold up your phone camera. That'll take you. There's also a link down below from the link tree or on the website at thewizardfactory.com. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Definitely going to be a great show, really deep and potentially challenging conversation, but that's very important. This is never going to be an easy process. We have to be willing to take a hard look at these sometimes very ugly truths if we ever want to, actually create any meaningful change in the world. So, you know, that's what we're going to bring to you here on this channel. We're not going to sugarcoat shit. We're going to bring the real deal, because that's the only way the real work can be done. So, thank you everyone for being here. Got some nice comments going on down below. Sophie, always a pleasure. Leslie, Jason in the house, Misty, much love to you all, guys. So let's get into it without further ado. Let's bring on Will. What's up, brother?
My brother, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, thank you. And I think Rodney's taking care of something real quick. He said he would be back in just a few minutes. So we're going to go ahead and kick this off. Yeah, man. I mean, this is going to be, I think, one of the most important pieces that I've done in a while. This topic is just so crucial in this time, and where there's so much confusion around what it even means to be a man, to be a woman, much let alone like how to relate to one another in those dynamics, right?
Yes.
So we're gonna get into this in a very deep and heavy way, and I think just to start things off. With the topic of circumcision, right? We're going to kind of go through a whole list of different unique challenges that men face. And this is, the first one, right? It's literally, welcome to the world. Welcome to planet Earth. Here's some trauma. Here's some genital mutilation for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to start with a little bit of disclaimer here. The purpose of this is not to shame anyone. It's not to make you feel bad. If you have some feelings of guilt as a parent, that, I just encourage you to sit with that. Obviously, there's nothing that can be done about what has already occurred in the past. You do need to forgive yourself, but truly also take responsibility for choices made. There's so much misinformation around these things. It's so easy to just kind of go along with, well, this is just how things are. This is how things are done. This is what the doctors say, right? The doctor's the medical authority. We're going to trust him over our own intuition, our own, parental instincts to protect, to care and nurture. This is how it happens. And, first and foremost, all three of us men here that are going to be participating, we've all gone through that trauma ourselves. So, we understand firsthand. This is, but it needs to be talked about, because again, as you can't change the past, but you can change your future choices, and at the very least, maybe pass on some awareness to another person that maybe hasn't made those choices yet for their own. And as they're becoming new parents, you can, just give them a little bit of something to think about before they make any decisions that are literally permanent and, at this point, verifiably proven as harmful, not only physically but psychologically as well. So
it's so empowering, right? To break cycles through knowledge. This is kind of what we aim to do, is to break these cycles of trauma and control in all aspects of life. And this is a big one. So it's, getting in that discomfort zone, accepting the past, but you're here now to learn, and you can have a change for the future.
Absolutely. So, as we get into this, I want to start off with just maybe a little bit of humor to kind of lighten things up. I know this is heavy. I saw this meme as I was working on making notes for it, and it cracked me up. Because there's this idea of like going to heaven, and you'll be like complete, you'll be whole again, right? So there you go. So let's try to set a little positive tone before we get into some pretty heavy shit here. I want to follow that with a reel that I actually made and posted on my page, I guess a couple of weeks ago. And that I think really encapsulates kind of like the idea behind this as a normalized action or practice that especially here in the West. So I'm going to play this real quick. It's the original sin of the medical world.
Yes.
You're born dirty and we need to fix you. You know, medical science, the god of science, needs to fix you. This is not just a matter of medical ignorance. This is very, very deliberately done for a specific reason. It is the black magic ritual to stifle the sexual energy, to change the brain chemistry for life. Yes, we can kind of look at this in sort of a symbolic or a metaphorical perspective of, the phallus is sort of your sword, and the sword in the occult represents truth, knowledge, like cutting through the bullshit, cutting through the ignorance, slaying evil. And so when they blunt and dull your sword right from the get-go, right out of the gate, so to speak, again, this is no accident. We're basically being disarmed violently on a energetic and metaphysical level. Right. That disarmament idea I thought was pretty powerful. A man, the sword is an extension of a man's, like, his truth, right? And then that's what he uses as his gift to the world to wield against evil, against chaos and ignorance and slavery. And they're directly attacking that within hours of you
right
being
out of the gate, man. Yeah.
Right.
I think I got an echo.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything on this.
I can hear it, Rodney. Oh, I got one too. Shit. Maybe it's because you're sharing your screen.
Maybe. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and share this next piece, and then I'll turn the screen share off, and hopefully that fixes it. Let us know in the comments if you're getting an echo on my voice or these guys as well. But I was a little bit torn to play this next clip. It's a clip from a film that you can find on YouTube. I recommend everyone, man or woman, watch this film. It's only half an hour long. It's called Child Circumcision, An Elephant in the Hospital. And it's a presentation by this professor here. Very well done, very difficult, but again, important, right? We need to face this stuff. And I wanted to play a clip from it that shows actual footage of this procedure being done. And like I said, I was kind of going back and forth on it. I asked these gentlemen before the show what they thought of it, and they thought that I should go ahead and show it because, we need to look at what's happening, right? It's so much easier to just say yes to the doctor. They take your child away to another room. You don't have to look at it. You don't have to see your choice being carried out in front of you.
Right.
And so, again, my intention is not to be purposefully sensationalist or hyperbolic or anything like that. And I encourage you, if you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. Just turn it off and come back in a minute or so. Just give it a minute and bypass it if you choose to. If you have a weak stomach or you're very, very sensitive to these things, I get it. But I just want to show what's the reality of this situation, of this choice that's being made, probably thousands, millions of times. I don't know, many, many times every single day. So I'm going to play that now.
Again, you're welcome to not look at it. I find this uncomfortable. Okay, so I want to encourage you to take a deep breath if you've been having trouble breathing, like I have during that.
Right. So there it is.
Yeah, man. Straight up trauma.
Yeah, that is not okay.
No.
Yeah, I mean that it makes me tear up and enraged. It really does. I mean, I think parents they have no clue what's going on. The significance of that religious trauma and what it does to the human being. It fractures the psyche instantly, right?
Yeah.
And it creates, I mean, the foundation. A child is just born, and it had the implications are irreversible in some cases, in some people. It really that sets the tempo for a lot of the trauma and the issues that human beings have today. It's brutal, and they downplay it, right? Like you said, Logan. Oh, doctor, we'll just take your baby. It's just they don't feel the skin. There's no pain. They just take it off. It's in a different room. Parents don't hear the baby screaming. The baby's screaming for mother is what the baby's doing, right? I mean, the baby should not leave mother's side. I mean, for many, many days, of course, father as well, but in the first hours of birth with mom, nonstop, and then just taking the baby away from mom is traumatic. So
this is a great point made here by DJK Chimera. How could you ever trust your guardians after that? And of course, before you even have the capacity to reason that as an infant child, you're not literally thinking that, but you feel that. It's innate, it's instinctual. Where are my parents? Why are they allowing this to happen to me?
Yeah.
And like you said, Will, they try to downplay and minimize it so much. They call it routines, infant circumcision. There's nothing routine about that. It's just like a routine traffic stop. It doesn't make it any less coercive just because it's routine, right? That's such a wordplay, sorcery bullshit, nomer there for it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to look at it, it's also, talking about the sword, it's also your fire wand, man.
Yeah.
In context to fire magic and as a man, and how you're actually wielding things. And the other spell cast that's thrown out in context to the Abrahamic constructs are the steeples, right? So we're dealing with phallic symbols on the churches in context to this ritual. You see,
exactly.
And do you see how that spell cast throughout the whole, on every corner of every city and small town? I mean, it blows your mind when you see how intricate this web is set up in context to just that particular one thing of circumcision and how it's actually drawn out into the spell cast.
And it's proven to change the brain chemistry forever. The brain functionality is linked to higher levels of aggression, even higher rates of crime.
Yeah.
When you compare. Yeah. So it's I think encouraging the manifestation of the toxic masculine, of the dominator, the abuser, right?
Yes. Right.
Well, also think about where this comes from, right? This is a religious ritual that's been going on for hundreds and thousands of years. And it's part of that religious mindset that you are not whole. You don't need a piece of you, right? And this piece of you is sinful, so we need to discard it. And our body, the human being, the body, the vessel communicates with the natural world all the time, even in the womb. Right? There's an intelligence in our body that's communicating. So when you go through some type of trauma, even in the womb as well, what mother is going through, that kind of stuff, it's learning, and it's putting the baby in fight or flight, even at that young of stage. All the cortisol, all these chemicals are pumping. Then you have the issues as the child gets older of almost protecting their genitals or having being insecure about that. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's such an important topic, But this is generational trauma, right? It's tradition. Like you said, Logan, routine. Most parents don't think twice about it.
Absolutely.
No, and it is rooted in the Abrahamic construct, like you're saying, Will, in context to the actual dark ritual, dark occult, dark ritual sorcery that's going on with this, and to, basically bring men into a place where, where everything becomes inverted in their lives, because of this ritual that's trauma based in context, because they never actually did get a bonding time with their mother. See?
Mm.
And so they've already went through the trauma of birth. Now they're dropping in the trauma of circumcision and vaccinations and separation from the mother on top of it. And then you're dealing with all these layers that get inputted into the psyche in context to chemical reactions on the physical level as well. And then the actual construct then is already starting to be built in context to the aversions, and the karmic aspects. It's mind-blowing, man.
It represents the disconnect from nature.
Right.
This is man saying,
straight up.
Man's ripping the human being away from creation, saying, like, you're a part of us now. You're disconnected from nature.
Yeah.
Like
What's
branding.
more sacred than the phallic for the seed? And then same thing with the woman, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is how creation is created, right? This is what we do. And that is what it symbolizes, the disconnect of nature and the initiation of servitude and ownership.
That is a really interesting point, that it's almost like a form of branding, like you would do to a cattle. You're marked on your body by a form of like traumatic,
100%, dude. And, in the ancient times, they would slice, and then the rabbi or the priest would literally suck it off, eat it off, rip it off with their teeth in their mouth. So it's
sick,
it's disgusting.
It's routine,
psychotic.
It's just routine. It's
just routine.
No big deal.
And think about it, how sensitive that area is in context, right?
Oh yeah.
As far as the nerve endings and
There's
everything that go up
thousands and thousands of irreplaceable nerve endings that get severed with that.
Exactly, man. I mean, unbelievable,
And cutting a man off from his pleasure as well in that way.
Yes.
I also find it interesting that this is a religious practice, but many religions, Christians and what have you, have an issue with body modification. They'll tell you, oh, tattoos are sinful. You're messing with the form, right? The body that God gave you. But the foreskin, now that needs to be, just cut right off. And even that is positioning man as God, as well. We'll design the body as we see fit.
Yeah.
Right. The nature's design is subpar. It's inferior. So, I mean, there's a lot of different directions you could go down into diving deeper into this. I went most of my adult life without having ever really given it a second thought until I had a girlfriend that was very, very anti. She called herself an intactivist. She was very outspoken about the harms of this, and she showed me this film, and ever since then you can't unsee it. And it's like, wow, I have to really acknowledge, like, this is messed up. What happened to me it's a trauma, and it needs to stop. So some of you this may be the first time you're hearing this, and that's okay. It was a shock to me too, but it's important to be honest with yourself and just face things as they are. So I highly recommend just type that title into YouTube. It's the first one that pops up. It's only a half hour long, and it really is very thorough in covering every aspect, all the typical stuff you hear about, well, it's cleaner and it's better for this reason and that reason, or it's not that bad. It covers all of that really well.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's all false.
The other thing,
it's like, oh, well, our ears get dirty behind here, so it's better to just cut the ears off at birth. That way you don't have to worry about cleaning them, because you could get an infection. Like, how does that make any sense? But that's literally no different than what they're justifying this with.
Another thing that this does is that it inputs the frequency of abandonment into the psyche of the man right out of the gate, because you're literally you feel like you had mentioned this, Will. You literally feel, even though you're born into this world, you're a baby, your mind is still there, and it's inputting that in context to being pulled away from your mother, and putting yourself and being put into a trauma response state immediately before you even get any breast milk, anything. And that abandonment is the first wound of Chiron in context. See, when you're dealing with all of the wounded issues that you've got to go through, that you have to overcome in this life, and healing, so literally, like, the spell cast out of the gate throws the abandonment issue directly into your psyche minutes after you're born.
Mm-hmm.
It's so dark, man, and evil.
And this comment here from Tommy, I think, nails it right on the head. Would it enforce the slave mentality through installing a mentality of non-ownership of your body? 100%. That's a big part of what it is.
Yeah.
It's a violation of your autonomy, of your own boundaries, and the divinity of your vessel right out of the gate.
Right.
And and again, it's subconscious. The baby doesn't understand self-ownership, but he understands he's being harmed, that people are doing these horrible things, that the world is hostile, right? Like, within hours of your life, you're undergoing body mutilation. What does that tell you about you just barely made it out of the womb and this is happening to you? That's going to set a precedent for your mindset throughout the rest of your life.
And not only that, but how about all the vaccinations and shots they give you on top of it?
Exactly.
I mean, it's just wow.
But this reinforces this idea that, this is a human farm. We're like the cattle, and people always want to say, well, why would they take care of us? Why would they do this and that? If they didn't care about us, right? Well, a farmer, pays for vaccinations for its animals so they don't get sick. He pays for their food. He houses and shelters them, not because he loves them, but because it's the cost of doing business. It's overhead. That's what that is.
And he brands them as well.
Exactly. Facts. Perfect.
Yeah, you can't feed off of sick energy, right? The loosh that humans generate and the social engineers feed off of, right? They try to reap those benefits if they're sick. The whole birthing process is something I want to touch on real quick. The whole process is, modern, what typically the average birthing process in a hospital, it's cold, vaccinations, needle crafts, all this kind of stuff. The whole process is inverted. It's a detachment from nature, and it's traumatic, very traumatic. So
exactly.
that
unnatural,
absolutely. For sure. And it's trauma bonding.
Yes.
This is what people need to understand. This life, trauma is in this life for us to learn and grow. The first segment of trauma is obviously the birthing process. It is traumatic. That is the golden opportunity where mother and child trauma bond together. And that is going to connect them to on energetically, physically, all of that, right? It's going to connect them, or it's going to disconnect, fracture, and this is where all the issues start to snowball, right? I mean, especially for men, when you look at it at a psychological aspect with the anima and the animus, right? The anima is the relationship from man to mother, or boy to mother.
Right.
So right then and there, you get that fracture. And someone posted in the comments about trust and this. And I mean, the list goes on.
Yeah.
So
it's a straight up abandonment, man.
Is.
Yeah.
Yep. Brutal.
So I think we've covered this topic pretty well. We've got a lot of ground to cover here on the show. It's probably going to be a long show, guys and gals. So just keep that in mind. Get yourself a cup of coffee. And hopefully it's useful and informative to you. But I think we can move on now to the next topic, which is spanking. Again, we're kind of in early life of a male. Of course, spanking happens to daughters as well. But I would say that typically boys get it worse, right? It's this idea of toughening them up, right? They're stronger, so they can handle it. The girl might get a lighter sentence or get grounded instead, this kind of thing. These are just generalities. I'm not trying to diminish anyone's anecdotal experience, of course, but but just looking at this in general as a trauma, it doesn't have to be just about boys either. But I think it's an important one that goes hand in hand with circumcision. It's early life trauma that is normalized and justified. And I want to just kind of just put this right out front to begin with, that spanking installs the program that primes the mind to accept the slavery of government. It puts the authoritarian mindset that it's okay for your parents, they're the authority, right? They're the microcosmic authority of the household before the government takes their place when you become an adult and they become the new mommy and daddy. So this is setting the precedent psychologically for you that the authority has the right to do violence to you.
Yes.
And that is a means to an end, right? Some children just need to be taught a lesson, right? Well, and it's ignoring the moral factor of like, well, how would we get things done if we didn't force people to do, right? Well, it just works, right? The system works, so it's good enough. Well, yeah, I mean, violence is a means to an end, right? If you need money, well, just go rob somebody, right? Problem solved. That's cool. It works. So why? Because there's a moral objection to it. Just because it gets your needs, ostensibly met as a parent, because frankly, you're too lazy to be more creative with your parenting style and respectful to your child, respecting their autonomy, their rights as an individual human being. They're not your property. You need to learn to have interpersonal skills with them, right? Just because you're the parent doesn't make you the automatic authority in that you own them. You're just a steward for them. You're supposed to be teaching them, protecting and providing them. And if you use violence as a consequential tool, the only thing you're actually teaching them is that it's okay to use violence to get what you want, especially from the authority, the parents that are supposedly the ones that are actually supposed to be protecting them, and they're the single source of trauma and violence in their life. So what do you guys want to add to that?
Freedom starts in the family dynamic, right? The mindset, the atmosphere in the household. That's really important. I mean, everything you said, Logan, I agree 100%. The violation of one's body sets the precedence. And the world doesn't work that way, right? If you want it to be healthy and you want to accomplish true moral successful goals, I don't go out to my yard and shake the shit out of my apple tree and hoping it's going to just drop apple or grow apples for me.
Right.
It's like it doesn't work that way, right? If I beat the shit out of my tree, hack it up, it's not going to produce.
Right.
So, I mean, just looking at it logically, it doesn't make sense. Again, this is a tradition, an immoral, violent tradition that, that's been passed down through generations. I was spanked as a kid, and not a lot, but once in a while. But my dad, he loved me a lot, and he told me as I got older that he regretted it. And and he even asked me, he's like, did I spank you a lot? And you could see the remorse, and just talking to him about information that I've learned over the years, morality, rights, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it definitely registered. There's that innate feeling with a lot of parents, not in the totality. Some people are completely unconscious about it. When they spank their kid, they feel bad, but they keep doing it, right? And that the conscious starts to become silent, and they don't listen to that inner voice. So, it's just something parents do, a complete violation of it's not your property. We don't own our kids. Like you said, Logan, we're stewards. It's a facilitation of another being, and it's very important.
Yeah, just real quick too about what you were saying, the guilt that comes with that. something incidentally, my mom actually gave me more spankings than my dad. Now, when my dad gave me spankings, it was worse. It was a lot more like, that's what you really don't want, right? Mom's going to go easier on you. I did get spanked a lot, and I wasn't a bad kid either. I mean, sure, I had issues, and I had my challenges. I'm not going to downplay that whatsoever. But I definitely, I mean, growing up in Texas, Bible Belt, like they don't spare the rod, so to speak. And
It's in the holy book.
something my mom
That's just it. It's in the book, man. It's got to be right.
something my mom would tell me a lot before she would do this to me is, this hurts me more than it hurts you.
Right.
Ooh, gaslighting.
Oh yeah.
Boom.
Good one.
Exactly. And it's that whole blaming, like, oh, why are you making me do this? Right.
Mhm.
If you would
Yeah.
just behave, if you would
Right.
just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some of my friends would be like, my mom made me go out and find my own switch.
Oh yeah.
Literally
That's
cut off,
brutal.
part of the rose bush or whatever, and that's what she spanked me with. I had to go find my own, my own
Weapon.
weapon that was going to beat the shit out of me. I mean,
Right.
think about what that does to the subconscious mind.
It's very
You know?
demoralizing as
Oh my
well,
lord! Oh
which
shit!
that's part of mind control practices, is the demoralization as well.
Absolutely. Then taking it to the school construct, they used to hit us in school, man, with the
Mhm.
SWAT,
Yep.
bend over, grab your knees, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yep.
and they'd have holes in the paddle, man, and they'd whap back and they'd hit you literally lift you off the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Messed
talk
up.
about how immoral that is, taking it to the school construct, in context to, hey, this is supposed to be a place where I'm learning how to, an education, but you're beating the shit out of me. You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
I mean, it all plays into the same dynamic and narrative.
Yeah. It's that artificial authority construct of creating artificial consequences for things, right?
Right.
Like if the child stays up late when the parent told them to go to bed at a certain time, they stay up all night, and then they're, tired for their test or whatever the next day. That's the natural consequence. You make them get up the time that they're supposed to get up, and they feel that, oh, why did I do this to myself, right? You don't
Mhm.
need to resort to violence to teach your kids the consequences of their own actions. I
Right.
think the trick there, and I mean, I'm not a parent. Granted, I'm not the ultimate authority. Some might say I don't have, the right to speak on these things, but I'm going to share my thoughts anyway. I would say the right balance is, you let them feel all of the consequences of their own actions up to a point, right? As the parent, there is a certain threshold where, you're not going to let something super bad happen to them. You're not going to let them make a choice that's permanent, like getting a tattoo when they're 6 years old or something crazy like that. There's a middle ground there, but for the most part, you can let them feel the consequences of their own actions, with a certain threshold, is essentially what I'm trying to say. And that will teach them far better than violence will.
And what do they call it, right? Spanking, they call it discipline. That's not what
Yeah.
discipline
That's
is.
nothing to do with discipline.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's that lack of communication there, where the emotional outburst, where most parents are reacting instead of responding to their child and communicating to their child,
Right.
and instilling boundaries. Discipline would be, communicating to a child like, oh, you feel like shit because you're staying up late all the time, right? Well, I get up early. This is what I do. Let me show you the cause and effect. And you inspire and motivate. And you have that regiment, right? So it's just funny how they kind of invert that term. They call it discipline, and with the violation of one's body. It's just
right, because this
humor.
approach comes hand in hand with the authoritarian, of approach of like, well, why are you doing it? Because I said so, right? There's
Yeah.
again, you're not communicating. You're not actually trying to educate your child. You're just teaching them, I'm the authority. You just better do what I say, or else I'm going to hurt you physically.
And it's no different than the slave construct we've got going on a collective level. It just plays into the narrative, from the time that you're, that formative years from 1 to 7, when your psychological makeup's being built, in context to this, that's Aries. Aries is like the child, 1 to 7 years old. It needs to be taught by the parents, Scorpio, how to actually do things correctly, the way shower, right? But if you're not doing that and you're stuck in your own Aries bullshit at 30 or 40, and you still haven't pulled out of that shit yet, and you're still the tyrant of your own life, you're going to project that onto your children.
Really good point. I think a lot of spanking is probably in that 5 to 7, 8 range, right? The formative years where the operating systems, I mean, those are the most crucial years, right? 0 to 8. And good point, Rodney. I just wanted to say that's right in the formative years. I mean, that just has huge, laying the foundation of the slave think, and the belief in authority.
And it's almost always perpetuating the cycle of trauma and abuse, because most likely that especially the older generations, there was a lot more normalized. And spanking is just what you do. Like sometimes kids need to have their ass whooped, right? And the victims will tell you the same thing. Oh, I was a nightmare. I needed my ass whooped sometimes. You know what I'm saying? And they're justifying their own abuse, so of course they're going to do that to their kids as well. Right. I've had many conversations about this with people, of just trying to show them, like, no one's arguing that it is an effective means of controlling behavior. That's the reason the government does it too. It's not the optimal and in alignment with natural law. That's the key difference. And so it's very difficult to get people to face the truth and actually admit, okay, that was abuse, what I had done to me, and that's not okay, and I refuse to do that to my child. They justify it because if they admit that, like, they won't do it to their child, they have to admit that it was wrong what was done to them, and that's too scary. It's too real.
Exactly.
So it continues.
When you restrict anything, the effect of that is, not trusting. This is why a lot of kids lie to their parents. Even though they get their ass whooped, they still will lie, and they won't have that direct communication and open up to their parents and all that stuff. So it has like a reverse effect. And this is what happens when you restrict free will.
Exactly. So yeah, I think that covers that topic pretty well. Moving on, we got lots of traumas to cover here today. So, now we're kind of getting into some of the standard, things that men have to deal with. And the next thing I have here is emotional shame, repression, and stoicism. So this sort of expectation for men to not be emotional at all, to just almost be like robots, right? That don't have feelings. And that's going to play into a little bit the next thing we talk about, which is suicide rates. But just in general, my take on this, first of all, is there's a difference between having emotions and showing them, and or expressing them to someone else, right? And I think there's healthy and unhealthy ways to do this. I think that men should be composed. I think they should cultivate a mastery over their emotions, so they're not just these weepy, like, emotional beings that are constantly having meltdowns or complaining all the time, right? This is beta male, kind of behavior. But there are healthy ways to, of course, men have feelings. They're just not ruled by them, or shouldn't be, I should say, because we're talking about the male archetype as fully embodied and evolved versus like the man boy, right? That many men, let's face it, are. And so again, I think it's important to have healthy ways of, like, having your brothers that you can kind of talk to about stuff you're going through, so that you're not encumbering, say, your woman, your spouse, because women aren't really equipped instinctually to do that. I
Right.
that could be a controversial statement. Lots of women feel very like connected to a man when he's sharing his feelings and all this kind of thing. But I think for the most part, without speaking in blanket statements or absolutes, most of the time it makes a woman anxious and feel unsafe with a man if he needs to express his feelings to her, as if he can't kind of figure out what to do, or he's looking to her to either console him like a mother or give him some kind of solution that he can't arrive at on his own. That's my take right there.
Yeah, it's good to know real quick to that point that there are characteristics, hey, guess what? Men and women, we have different characteristics. So it's good to kind of recognize that, equal in rights, absolutely, but our characteristics are different. And yes, I would say, men are more of that, the active grounding energy. But that does not negate emotional intelligence, right?
Right.
And understanding your internal ecology, the way you feel, your emotions, and all of that stuff. But the expression of that is very different from men to women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with with your partner laying down the emotional intelligence to solutions. That's part of the process. I think what Logan's talking about is, where you are actually as a man capitulating to the feminine energy in context to, being a victim or not, not being able to figure things out. And so,
Capitulating is an excellent word for that.
and so what are you doing? You're actually coming under, under the feminine aspect instead of actually being the protector of it. So I think there's definitely a line there. I've experienced, being able to actually, bring myself into a place where I can explain logically and with reason how I'm approaching things with the partner, and then bringing that into a place of solution where then we're both back into alignment. Where things aren't getting more dramatic, more chaotic, more out of balance, but you're actually, as a man, bringing things back into balance to logic and reason. And I
Exactly.
think that's what has to happen, really has to happen.
That's the masculine gift, right? That
Exactly.
discernment, that groundedness, that like stability, right? Emotions make a man very like shaky and wishy-washy and all over the place. I like how Leslie put this here as well. I think women are equipped to help others process emotions and do it all the time with others. It's just that we don't want to have to do it for our men too. Exactly. Women are great at facilitating, of listening, right? Showing empathy for one another. They're very social, tribe-oriented beings. But exactly, it's like the men shouldn't be encumbering their woman with that, because they're supposed to be the ones holding the container and holding frame for things. So let's give one just quick, like kind of anecdotal example, hypothetically. Instead of saying, oh, it hurts my feelings when you do X, right? And so he's just sharing the feeling and then kind of just leaving it up to her, instead of just setting a healthy boundary, because that's what the masculine does. That masculine is about that discernment, drawing lines, boundaries, and just saying, don't do this, love. Of course you're not being a jerk. You're grounded in your heart space, right? You're coming from care. You're setting a boundary as an act of service to not only yourself but her as well, so that you can hold that container and not compromise your polarity. So instead of expressing the feeling and just leaving it hanging out there and just like, here's this, will you set your own boundary for this feeling that I'm having? You're just saying, don't do this. It's not conducive to the container and our relationship. And the trust has to be there, of course, for her to just trust his leadership and be willing to submit to that. And that's where we're talking about these kind of gender roles.
You guys nailed it. Absolutely. A masculine quality is problem solving, right? That's a very good masculine quality that I think a lot of men nowadays, the soy boys, I mean, they don't have that aspect. They're looking for validation. Almost, I mean, they're projecting that onto a lot of women, but it's that lack of connection from, the mother. They got that unhealthy anima coming out in their psychology and in their behavior as well.
Totally.
If you want to take it to astrology, it's the 10-4 axis in context to Capricorn and Cancer. Capricorn being the father aspect and drawing the boundaries, to the relationship. Cancer being the mothering, aspect.
Emotions. Yeah,
exactly. So when you're dealing with that 10-4 axis, this is what gets manipulated to the Saturn Moon matrix. So this is how things get locked down in context to the masculine force. When we're dealing with that particular axis and the actual straight up high vibe Capricorn energies that we're supposed to be, Saturnian energies as men that we're supposed to be wielding in context to cosmic principle and natural law.
And this is not about genitalia. It's about instincts that are seated in the biology, in the body. This is why, I mean, the whole transgender thing, we're going to, it's a big deal right now. It's getting worse and worse. And there's, of course, a lot of nuance to it. Every human being has individual rights. So I'm not trying to dehumanize people. I'm not trying to say they deserve to be treated badly or anything like that. I'm simply calling sickness what it is. And as a man especially, I have an obligation to speak the truth and to use that sword to cut through the bullshit and just call a spade a spade. And that's just what it is. So there's so much inversion in the sexual energy. I'd say that's front and center of this spiritual war that they are waging upon us. If they have us sexually confused, we're done, because that's the biggest source of our power. And so this comes from, again, the body, right? Nature, connecting to your instincts. This is just yet another example of disconnecting us from nature, is the innate intelligence of your body. Be able to actually be connected to that, to listen to what it's telling you when something's happening in relationship and your body's like, I don't like that. But your brain is too mired in programming and your own wounding and trauma that you fall into that inversion. And then the woman is masculized and the man is emasculated. And so on, around and around you go in that unconscious feedback loop that we talked about recently.
Internal confusion leads to external control.
Yeah, right.
Bang.
Yeah. If you don't even know what gender you are, how are you ever going to know who you are? You can't even own your own gender. How the hell are you going to do anything?
Yep.
Yes.
Especially for the masculine, right? The masculine is penetrating,
right?
And then actually, just real
like
quick,
a sword.
Bringing it back to like a sword, exactly. Bringing it back to circumcision. What does that do? That makes you internal and receptive, almost like going into your turtle shell.
like that idea of original sin. You're being attacked in your sword, your phallus.
Yeah.
At infancy, that's sending a message to you psychologically. There's something inherently wrong with you. This thing bad. We need to cut it off. So don't you dare penetrate anything with your masculine presence with that force, right? But not just force like for the sake of force. Force that's grounded in heart-based intelligence. That's really what it means to be a man. If you're not acting out of service from this place right here, you ain't no man. Period.
If you're trying to control a society, enslave a society, you need to disarm the men. This is the strength. This is the strength, right? I mean,
energetically,
if you don't want the slaves to rebel, and become free, I mean, you have to disarm the men. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And that's energetically, metaphysically, as well as physically.
It's way different in ancient times, maybe, where they would just literally physically go and have a battle and kill the men, then take the women later. Right now, it's covert. It's all about psychological and energetically, and physical too. I have to say, when we say we're in war, it's all three aspects: psychological, energetically, and physical. It's just different than what people think.
There's no stone unturned when it comes to where they're bringing this war to us.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
mean,
important.
it's
100%,
it's
man.
stra- it's straight up epigenetics, man. Even taking it all the way down to the food and the water, man.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Definitely that's a big one. Chemical warfare
Yep,
is a
yep,
big
huge.
culprit when it comes to this polarity confusion stuff. So that leads into the next idea of higher suicide rates in men. And so again, this is not about a contest, right? What I call the victim Olympics. This isn't about who's more oppressed, who has it worse. It's nothing like that. Women commit suicide too. This is not to diminish that. It's just taking an honest look at the two different sides and
Right.
where things kind of land. Things are never black and white. Anyone watching this show knows that. I've gone, ad nauseum about that. So, depending on where you're taking statistics from, what region, this will vary a bit, but the rates are anywhere from 1.5 to 3 times higher in men than women. It's definitely not a small number. And it could be said that this is due to societal expectations around masculinity that may discourage men from expressing vulnerability or seeking emotional support, right? So again, there's that imbalance of like, it's not just having emotions, it's how you deal with them. And so if you're coming from that place of imbalance, you're gaslighting yourself of like, oh, my feelings make me weak, I need to just man up and pretend like everything's fine when it isn't. And just, it's not weak to have trauma, to have pain, to have heavy emotions. It's weak to ignore them, and then to especially act them out subconsciously by traumatizing others. What
Yeah,
is strong is accepting the truth that you have these feelings and taking action. That's what a man does. He doesn't sit around and wallow in pity and self loathing. He takes action. I have a problem. I'm going to do something about it. And you seek help. You seek support from your brothers, from your family, from your tribe, and professional help if that's the route that you need to go. Whatever you need, right? It's not about
yeah,
how, oh, I can't. It's how can I? That's the question a man asks himself.
Yeah, man. Well said. A lot of this stems from one aspect is the war on testosterone.
yeah,
Testosterone
yep,
is vital for men and women, but mainly for men,
Mm,
right? Men have more testosterone, need more testosterone. This is the fire in a man, right? This is
right,
where willpower and I mean, just so we're talking about a chemical imbalance. And if the body is the vessel, is the receiver, and you're fucking with that, right? Then the signal's going to be muddy and you're getting
yeah,
static.
yeah,
And estrogen in men, your whole system is going to get inverted.
yeah,
Your mental, emotional, and physical. And if just, I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole I highly recommend people check out. But with the water, the foods, um, um, the even entertainment, right? Masturbation. I mean, there's all
yeah,
kinds of porn, like all
yeah,
these addictions,
yes,
right?
it's
There's so many avenues that lead to lower testosterone. It's detrimental to men.
Mm. It's interesting because that's another point on my list,
Mm.
is addictions being higher in men as well. But we'll not to jump ahead there. I wanted to comment on this comment here by Chimera. I would be wary seeking professional help. A lot of psychology is try to adjust us to an insane world. I agree with that. With the word wary, I definitely think it is a potential avenue that especially desperate times call for desperate measures. If what you're trying isn't working and you feel called to go that route, do what you got to do. But I do think it's healthy to be wary. The system, especially the conventional healthcare system and psychology, is very trepidatious, and you should approach it with caution and do a lot of research and vetting before you start entrusting your mental health to another stranger, essentially. But for example, just as a counterpoint and as an anecdote, Leslie Powers, who's in the chat right now, I've worked with her personally, and she is a professional, but she understands natural law. She's holistic minded.
Right.
She
Yeah.
understands moral principles and all of this stuff. I trust this woman, and she really does help people. So that's, a real world example of how that can, go both ways, really. So it's just use your discernment, be smart about it.
Huge.
Yeah,
Huge.
and
Yeah.
that takes it also back to a kind of a close circle of men, that we have that we can bounce things off of, and even just have that trust, that I think that we need as men. We need each other as men to be able to bounce off of things and talk
Yeah.
with each other, and maybe I need to vent, man.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. I need to vent this out, man. Can you be my, be my soundboard, man? Come on.
Hmm.
I need some help here,
Yeah. That's a great point, man. The support system.
Yes.
Men, all men support system, all women, they need their support system. Sure, you can have support systems where they intermingle, but guys, men need to get together. We need to wrestle, get dirty, talk shit, and express ourselves. It's healthy. That is
Yes.
good.
Right.
And even that can be shamed nowadays.
Hmm.
So very, very important stuff.
Yeah, it's making me think of the commonplace kind of stereotype and normalization of this concept of the man cave, right? How does that tell you how emasculated we've become as men, that to do whatever we want to do in our own house, we got to go into our little naughty corner of the home called the man cave, and that's our little safe space that our wife lets us go and drink beer and watch football and all this kind of stuff. It's
Like
it's
play
very
Yeah.
telling.
Yeah.
So,
True.
and I want to touch on what Leslie said here about, this is a great point, that women attempt suicide more while men complete suicide more. It has been proposed it's because men use more lethal means like guns, and I totally agree. I mean, it's masculine to so-called follow through, to get the job done, to solve problems. And as unhealthy as that is, of course, I'm not condoning it. But if you see that as the only solution to your problem, you're going to get that done. That's a masculine trait. And yes, men are kind of almost more brutal, right? We're warriors. We're going to
Yeah.
get that job done if that's the decision that we've made. And not to diminish female depression or even the suicidal thoughts, but I think sometimes, just hear me out, don't have knee jerk reaction to this, but I think sometimes women might be more prone to the so-called cry for help, that they're not actually serious about that desire to take their life. They are just so desperate in their own pain, and they don't know what else to do, and they see that as an effective means to actually get people's attention, to make them care enough. And that can be legitimate. It can also be an addiction to being a victim, and just always like thriving on that attention that they can get when they play that woe is me card. Again, I'm not at all minimizing real valid pain, but this is a thing that happens. And of course, sometimes men do it too,
Yeah.
as well. But I do see that as a slightly more feminine tendency.
I agree with that. Unfortunately, I've known a couple people that committed suicide, and I think this is a common theme with men, is that they bottle it up, right? It's
Yeah.
internally, and it's like, oh my God, so and so, killed himself. I can't. No one knew. No one knew that there were issues going on. We encapsulate that. It festers, and the dark seed kind of sprouts. But it's definitely. I agree with that. The emotional cry for help is a dark feminine quality for men with suicide. It's internally, and it's like a virus that can eat them up inside.
They feel
And what
like
does
they
that
have
do?
to.
That eats your care. That eats
Yes.
your care up. The heart space.
Demoralized once
Yes.
again.
Absolutely.
And they feel like they have to carry that burden completely on their own, because they're not as like network, like sisterhood tribe kind of mentality that women take on. The men tend to be a lot more like lone wolf minded, right? That, the Superman that does everything on his own or whatever.
Yeah.
Tommy brings up a good point as well, getting to the dojo, right? Just getting into the gym. Once again, the masculine needs to take action, and sometimes just expressing that aggression, that angst, and taking it out on a punching bag or a pair of dumbbells is a much healthier way to actually express that and get it out of the body.
Which they call toxic masculinity nowadays, right? It's like,
right.
I mean,
The
this is like,
gaslighting.
talk about a foundational principle of masculinity is action and expressing that action in the
Self-improvement.
external world. Yeah, yep, for sure.
Being a warrior against the weak version of yourself. How about that one?
There you go.
That's
Exactly.
healthy.
Exactly.
That's good for a man, you know? Women are generally more likely to talk about their issues with other people, while men, in great part, are conditioned to be tough and hold it in. Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And then, I guess I'll go ahead and add in. Where's that? The addiction thing, because that, we just already touched on that. Higher rates of addiction to drugs, alcohol, or gambling. Because again, if you're not going to get any kind of help, if you're not going to tell anyone about it, well, the best you can hope for is cope. So you're going to lean to coping mechanisms that are addiction, porn, drugs, things like that, to just try to numb the pain, because that way you don't have to deal with it, even though that doesn't actually solve anything. And then, of course, these things are, fueling and perpetuating that unconscious feedback loop, because those things are traumas in and of themselves. They're causing further self-harm, which is just compounding the trauma, the pain, and it just all builds up and gets worse and worse and worse until you actually deal with it and face it with your sword.
Yeah, and there's so much, and then that plays into the pharmaceutical industry as well. Then in context to, all of the serotonin uptake and all of the things that to try to make the man feel good about himself. When all this is being buried inside of him, because he's not being a man. See, he's not actually being a masculine force. So everything gets bottled in, goes internal. And then it emasculates the whole situation to his actual life and his relationships and his kids and his partner and his, at his workplace. And then he comes home from work and he bitches about work to his family because he hasn't dealt with it at work. He hasn't set the boundaries there. See? And so this just capitulates the problem to the whole family unit in general.
That's a great point. You're getting that pressure and that stress from every angle, and there's no healthy, safe place for an outlet. It's just like everything else is just kind of compound that problem.
I grew up with it, man.
I like this comment. Dick Flinghammer said, "I like chopping wood," which, first of all, that's the most masculine name one could have. Dick Flinghammer. But I actually think that's really profound, because an action like chopping wood, and how funny is that, kind of a male stereotype, right? The symbol of manliness, right? A dude in a flannel with the axe on his shoulder and chopping wood for his family. It's an act of service, right? It's breaking his back, breaking a sweat for the comfort and well-being of his family, to keep the home warm, with the fire. And also, there's a very meditative aspect to the action of chopping wood. It's just enough to keep your brain occupied, to where you're not just spinning out with all of the thoughts and the feelings and everything, but it's simple enough to clear your mind and kind of get you in that flow state. It's also very repetitive, which is, I think, an aspect of a meditative practice, is something like, it's just, you just do this thing. You just do this thing. Don't, and push everything else out. Well, not to ignore, but just in this moment, you're practicing that. Meditate means to balance, to find the middle, right? You're finding that center. So just this one action is just enough to keep the brain occupied and kind of put you in that meditative state. Very interesting. Focused
100%.
attention. Yes.
Yeah, even going out to get the wood, you got to go to the riverbanks. You got to go out into nature to actually, cultivate and harvest the wood itself.
Hmm.
So that's also an act of going out into nature if you want to really look at it like that.
Mm.
I love chopping wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up doing it. I still do it. I love it. It is meditative for me.
Yeah.
Meditation does not mean sitting on a yoga
Right.
mat,
Right.
with incense burning. And if that's your technique, so be it. But I'm just saying that most people think, oh, do you meditate for 2 hours a day? Like they think it's this like new age variant of a precise technique. Gardening is meditation for me. Chopping wood is meditation for me. Hiking is very meditative for me.
Exactly.
Like there's so many
Exactly.
different avenues. But
Music, playing
Yep.
music, creating
Yes.
music, setting it is a meditation.
Cooking is very
Cooking,
meditative for me.
exactly.
Exactly.
Mr.
I think men seek this kind of stuff, right? I mean, this is going back to addiction. It's feeling
Yes.
the substance is the substance. What's really going on is the issue in the psyche, which is trying to be numbed and put a Band-Aid on that. So there's many other addictions than just hardcore quote unquote drugs, right? I mean,
Right.
there's gaming can be an addiction where you're doing it all day, every day for hours and hours and hours. Porn is an addiction, right?
Right.
All of these
Yeah.
types of addictions, one, lower testosterone because you're not really being active. Adrenaline, someone put in
Right.
the comments, that could be an addiction
Yes.
as well. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think more men seek that adrenaline addiction than females.
Like dudes that you see like riding wheelies down the highway, that kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
not to say there's anything inherently wrong with that, but I definitely think that that's often an unhealthy outlet for the pain of that men are undergoing. And there's almost like this secret wish that something goes wrong and they die. So it's like
I was getting ready to say that.
it's like
Yeah.
they're edging
Yeah.
with the idea of suicide. They're not
Living on
actually
the edge
going
of it.
through with
Right.
it, but
Right.
hey, I'm going to do this thing. It makes me feel super alive. And if I die, I die. Right. And then it almost kind of takes that social stigma off of suicide.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
putting yourself in a position of danger, with whatever, adrenaline junkie rush you want to get, and putting yourself in that position where you could lose your life is almost psychopathic.
How would you feel now if I died? Right?
Exactly. You're just looking at it going, why would you want to do that, man?
Well, you don't value your life
Exactly,
because your self-worth
you are
is
right.
diminished.
Yes, exactly, man. So that's an addiction, and it gives you that rush, right? That rush into your head where, it's really causing chaos and stagnation in your life, actually. I mean, you got to look at it like, holy crap, man, I'm doing this. Why the hell am I behaving like this? Because I don't love myself, man, as a man.
Yeah.
I don't love myself. I don't have any internal love for myself at all. I don't give a shit.
Well, Rodney, we're here if you want to talk about it, man.
I know,
I'm just-
man.
So, yeah, that's a good coverage of that aspect as well. And I think the next one we can get into is kind of an offshoot of that, but it's linked to sexual shame and frustration. So, there's kind of this stereotype: men are very, almost obsessed with sex. That's all they care about. It's all we think about, this kind of thing. And, let's be real, there's some truth to that. But even looking at like nothing is black and white. Once again, I'm going to repeat that until I'm blue in the face. That it's like even the people that go on and on about toxic masculinity, they're not completely, without merit, basically. There is a lot of toxic masculinity in the world. Now, are they always correct in what they're calling toxic masculinity? Absolutely not. They're putting this blanket thing over really anything that's masculine is just toxic by nature. That's their version of imbalance. But then there is a lot of toxic masculinity going on. And there are a lot of men that are just dogs that are obsessed with sex, that they're only, looking to be a player and just get what they want from you and then leave you and all this kind of stuff. Like, I'm not denying any of that stuff. is a thing. So this is why I want to have these conversations, because, you know, to acknowledge all of that. It's not black and white. There's a little bit of all of this going on, but each thing has its place, and we need to actually understand where that's coming from. So what is the essence of a man's sexuality? It's penetration. This is not, I mean, it's depicted with the genitals as the external, right, outward protruding force that penetrates. It's hard, that penetrates what is soft and open and yielding, that is the feminine. But this is energetic as well. The physical is just a metaphor for the spiritual realm. This is the pagan mindset in a nutshell. Everything is metaphorical as well as literal. You have to see both left and right brain. But in this way, this is why something like action, right? Leadership, these are penetrative energies. You're asserting your will, you're asserting yourself, you're kind of pushing out in that way. And when masculinity is called toxic, is shamed from every angle, and your very manhood is being attacked, and that as Mark Benet put it, you're a good man when you're less of a man. If that, I'm kind of butchering it, but basically, the less of a man you are, the better man you are in today's modern woke society. And so, of course, that's going to create a lot of sexual frustration that is not only about pure sexuality, but just the man's innate need to penetrate his reality with his presence, with his desires, with his, actions, all this kind of thing. So it creates such a buildup of frustration, of like, nothing is receiving my gift of masculinity that I'm trying, and like I'm being shamed for it all the time. That creates a very agitated mindset. I think this is a big aspect of why things like all these mass shootings are happening. Because think about it, what is a shooting? But it's a man forcing, it's a form of rape. You're penetrating people with bullets, because it's like, you're going to take my masculine energy. It has to go somewhere. It's just being stifled and suppressed, and it just can't. It's like pinching the hose for so long. It builds that pressure up. It's going to explode. It's got to go somewhere. Same with emotions, right? You can't bottle them up. They have to go somewhere. Energy works a lot like water. This is why water is seen as the emotions. Quite a tangent there, but man, great. It's a good topic.
Men are under so much pressure, man. I mean, and that's the deal. I mean, understanding the King of Wands, and what that actually represents, context to the phallic, the hardness of the phallic, right? I mean, this is the penetration factor in context to the spiritual aspect that you're talking about, Logan, and how we're supposed to be, as men and as the masculine force in context to creation. And again, it's taking it back to, your masculinity and the force that you actually are wielding with the wand itself.
Right.
Actions. What actions are you actually taking? Are they in alignment with natural law and principle, or are they inverted to the narcissistic, tyrannical aspect? Again, in context to trauma-based responses, taking it back to the very beginning of you being circumcised.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You want men to be all nice and polite and well-behaved, and, oh, yes, please, may I, all this kind of stuff. It's a softening of a man. But if a man is soft, he's pushing rope, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're flaccid. You got no power, dude.
Right.
Like, you need that to be penetrative, to be effective.
Right. Exactly.
If you change that quality, it ceases to be what it is. It takes on the form of something else that is no longer masculinity.
And that energy just builds up, and it's going to go somewhere, like you said, like a geyser.
Yeah.
Modern culture cultivates the emasculation of men and the domestication of men, for sure. I'm in my 40s, so like in my teenage years, the men culture wanted it to be the player, the pimp, the big daddy, that kind of stuff like that. It's the roles are kind of reversing nowadays. Now it's the independent woman with the big dick energy, and the men are more feminine and emasculated. It's just, I mean, both time periods there's unhealthy imbalances going on.
Exactly.
So
The pendulum swings.
the pendulum swings. Yep, for sure.
Yeah, and then you got culture, like you said, Will, and then you add on the layer of religious, shame and suppression around sexuality. I mean,
Yes.
could be very controversial, and again, not to overly stereotype, but why is it that so many Muslims are associated with terrorism? Now, like, hear what I'm actually trying to say. Link that to how much sexual shame and repression is
Right.
associated with Islam.
Right.
And what did we just say? That energy has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
It creates like the mind of a rabid dog, and at some point it reaches its boiling point, and then it's going to explode in a way that's very harmful and unhealthy.
It's a very tyrannical. It's a very tyrannical energy against the feminine aspect as well. And when you're looking at the actual Muslim world,
Right.
and the actual, the having the thumb upon the feminine, so it cannot actually be what it actually
can't even
needs
show
to
their
be.
face.
Exactly. The burqas that they have to wear just so you can see the eyes. I mean, and then how the laws then perpetrate that action in context to the laws that are written in the Muslim world. I mean, it's mind blowing when you look at it, in context of where that energy is going.
Yeah, well said. Definitely. The sexual aspect for men, right? Nowadays, I mean, what culture promotes is, you got to perform well. You got to have a 12-inch dong, like
Yeah, right.
all this kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
what that's doing is it's lacking connection, like what men and women, how they
Right.
understand what connection is.
Mm.
And it's not about the flesh.
Right.
It's a part of it. It comes from a higher level, and the flesh is in there.
Yeah. The flesh is the plane of effects, not causality.
Exactly, for sure, man. And
Yeah.
this is where the mental and the emotional are. So just the lack of connection in general. And like I was saying about the roles reversing, right? The women are the pimps and the players nowadays. They can pick and choose any men they want. And this obligation or this feeling that men have to be, balling in their bankroll and nice cars, nice houses, and all this kind of shit. Like, this is still going on. The roles have reversed. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with forging something in your life as a man and being proud of it.
Of course, yeah, for sure.
And so, I look at it like that. I mean, I'm not trying to press anyone here. I'm doing this for myself.
Sure.
As a man, as my masculine force. And if I have a family, I'm doing that to support my family as well and cover them and protect them, and get them into a space where they're prospering as I'm prospering as a man and a masculine force,
Yeah.
And that's where things get really screwed up because, like you said, Will, it's all inverted to all that bullshit you just talked about. Like, I got to have this and I got to have that to get a woman. What?
Exactly. This is why we need to come to know ourselves on this deep level. This is why this conversation is so important, because it's not about finding the right person and the right person's going to make you better, right? You need to do that internal work yourself. You need to understand principles and truth, and then the resonance of that will bring you to like-minded individuals. And people have strayed away from nature and themselves so much that they're just looking for external validation to quote unquote make them better or their next level.
Right. Exactly. And that goes back to lack of self-worth again, and self-validation and loving yourself, which is the Taurus gate in context to that. And that is, what is that, ruled by Venus again? So we're dealing with all the inverted feminine aspect as well there. See? And so it all ties in and plays in together to the role of relationships to Libra, where you're supposed to be finding balance and harmony with your relationships.
Right.
Real
quick, I saw this comment, time for a lower fee PayPal donation. if you're looking to make a donation, first of all, appreciate that. Every little bit helps. If you want to avoid the fee, all you have to do is when you're clicking through, there's a selection you can make that says sending to a friend rather than paying for a service. If you click sending to a friend, there will be no fee. So I highly encourage you to go ahead and do that if you're feeling so inclined. And thank you very much. Great chat so far, gentlemen. I'm loving this. I really think we're bringing a lot to this here and just diving right into the nitty gritty of it. This is a big deal. So kind of another kind of sort of related thing is this idea of body standards. You hear about this topic a lot with women, which granted, that's very valid. And I would even go as far as to say women deal with this more than men. This is kind of a bigger deal for women than it is for men. But men still have some of this going on. This idea that you need to look like G.I. Joe. I made a Facebook post once. I said, what if I told you you don't have to look like a vascular hot dog to be masculine?
Right.
And what is it with police that look like literal penises? That just, I don't know. They shave their head. They got all these veins popping out, and they just go around fucking people. I don't know. Side note, but that's some observational humor there for you. But there's a lot of pressure guys put on themselves about like this gym culture of just like got to be swole, got to get them gains. I need to be stacked, and that's the only way that I have any self-worth or that I'm going to be able to attract a woman. These kind of things. I think it's healthy for a man to have aspirations, to push himself. There's a lot of great lessons for a man in the gym. I'm not downplaying that at all. I lift weights and I love that. It's a great challenge, to conquer myself and to build a strong mindset. But if you're tying that to your self-worth, that's where the problem comes in. It should be more an act of self-love and wanting to be the best version of yourself, acting from a place of care rather than a place of fear of, am I lovable? Am I manly? Am I this or that if I don't do this? And I'm going to let you guys kind of riff on that. I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be right back. So what do y'all think about this idea?
Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, I mean, like everything in society, it's rooted in the material realm, and that's the focus. That's the focus. It's looking in the mirror and identifying that, but also the what you want to be. I know some gym heads that are just nonstop. I would literally say they're addicted to it.
Yeah.
It's all about getting bigger, getting bigger, getting
right.
bigger, getting bigger, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's just the inflated masculine. And again, I'm all about health. Get the body in shape. Get the physical body in shape. Get it strong. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there is a point where there's no internal work being done, and it's all about the external material realm. And I think that's very unhealthy, and that's an imbalance as well. And like someone said in the chat, steroids, right? I mean,
that's another one, man. I mean,
that's a big one.
Exactly. And like you said, it can become an addiction just like anything else. And drawing that from your lack of self-worth as a man in general. So you're making up for it to the physical body, but you're wielding the energy force in your mind. Your state of mind still chaotic and stagnant as a man. You may be trying to lift weights and being in the gym and trying to be this badass and making everybody think that you're badass and hitting all the women and all this, but you're actually only being a stupid ass. That's what you're being as a man. You're being dumb, ignorant, and stupid. And if you don't understand the lack of self-worth that you're in, you're going to continue on these cycles. It doesn't matter whether it's, addicted to weights, drugs, alcohol, porn, whatever it is. If you're continuing on that road as a man, you need to take a look in the mirror and really take a checkup from the neck up in context to your masculine force and how you're actually wielding it to your own individual purpose and what you're actually trying to accomplish, and,
definitely.
there's a lot there between, between the heart space and the, your first eye and your third eye, in context to what needs to be ignited as a man, taking it to your ground, your root chakra, and your sacral, in context to, your phallus, and connecting all that together to your heart space.
Yeah.
There has to be a connection with the chakra systems. They have to be bridged. They got to be bridged.
Yeah, I had a couple points come up for me that, first of all, could this be sort of an act of reclaiming self-ownership of the body, because taking it back to the circumcision thing, that act is, you don't own yourself, your body is not sacred, and this is a compensation of them trying to control, like, I have control over the state of my body, I'm going to chisel myself into a Greek god because
Right.
I'm compensating for that feeling of helplessness and lack of control that trauma instills upon a person. The other thing was
Good
that
point.
someone, like you said, someone mentioned steroids. It's kind of like the male equivalent of when women get lip injections and all this
Right.
kind of stuff. I mean, I've even seen these guys from like South America and stuff that get these injections in their bodies and make their stuff swell up, and it's so gross looking. It's just like,
Yeah.
that is a mental illness. There's something really going on
Yes.
there, and it's like, how can you even feel pride in a body you've created through the use of something like that, that's using unnatural means like steroids or injections or something like that? You're clearly compensating well into something deeper. It's not just a sense of, oh, look at me, like, because again, I think there's a lot to be said about why uh, a man being muscular, being fit, is generally an attractive trait. I think that's based in something good, because it's subconsciously, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it's like subtext, non-verbally. It non-verbally communicates to a woman that this is a man that has self-mastery. He knows how to push himself. He knows how to take control and rise up and like challenge himself, right? That's very attractive. So again,
Yeah.
the physical is the plane of effects. It's
Yeah.
indicating the mental state. But when you have things like steroids, you're bypassing that. You don't have to put in as much effort. It's not to
Right.
say these guys don't work hard or anything, but clearly, if it was just about self-health, they wouldn't go anywhere near that stuff, right? It's coming
Yeah.
from a very unhealthy place.
Yeah, especially to what it does to your liver, and
Well,
your internal organs. I mean, you're actually just,
and your pee-pee.
yeah, exactly.
Exactly. You want to be
Exactly.
hella big, but
Right, right.
still.
Yeah,
Right. The
exactly.
bigger you get, the more
Yeah,
it shrinks
yeah.
up.
Exactly, I mean, it's crazy, man, when you think about it. But taking it back to the healthy aspect, having the confidence as a man, and that confidence and that strength of your physical body, and having that confidence, and base of who you are, knowing who you are. And then I believe that does attract a healthy woman.
Mhm.
See? Because you are actually wielding the force correctly in context to your own inner confidence, your inner Leo, your inner lion, right? And dealing with that Leo energy in context to how it's really supposed to be wielded, not in a narcissistic way, but in just knowing who you are and understanding that the decisions that you're making are healthy in your life. And that you are, and you hit it on the nail, Logan, self-mastery. You're self-mastering your masculine, divine masculine force.
I think skill sets are a masculine quality.
Yeah.
So I do
Capable,
construction.
competence.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. I do construction, interior homes, but I'm also like a handyman and a carpenter. There's nothing that I won't tackle. But I go into these homes and I see these jacked guys. I mean, they're huge, soft ass hands that don't know how to hang a picture, that don't know how to
Right.
put some trim on the floor, hang a bird feeder. They don't know any of this stuff. And they tell me, they go, "Oh, I'm not handy at all." That's a lack of masculinity, in my opinion. We're made to be externally solving problems, working with our hands and that kind of stuff, and not just the weights with Aveeno lotion and shit. Like, We got to have
Yeah.
these skill sets and
Right.
and self-mastery. Absolutely.
Because it begins with the will, which is a penetrative force that is expressed through action. And if you don't have the skills to pay the bills, you're going to suck at bringing that will, that desire into actual manifestation. So they go hand in hand. Great points there, man.
Being a
Love this.
provider, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's not estrogen that builds roads and buildings.
Yeah, man.
Sophie also
Exactly.
had a great point here. These are people who don't trust themselves, and the outside world makes them invincible. I definitely think there's a lot of fear-based, thinking around this as well, of like, again, coming back to the trauma, feeling unsafe. And so they have to make their bodies seem really big and scary, and that'll keep me safe, and the world will leave me alone because they'll respect me finally. And it's just this very wounded little boy kind of mindset of like, make myself bigger and rah. So, I'll be scarier than you, so that'll keep me safe.
Exactly.
Right.
It's the wounded child.
Great point. Great
Yeah.
point. Hey, I'm gonna go take a wiki leak real quick. I'll be right back.
All right, Julian Assange. And also there's several pointing out it's all about appearances, like this obsession with the physical world as well. And of course, again, this does apply to the women's side as well. This is going on in both genders. There's this obsession with gym culture and looking pristine so you can get the perfect Instagram shot, all this kind of stuff. It's all very much coming from an unhealthy place. Again, it's not that there's anything inherently wrong with these things, but what's driving these behaviors is really the $1 million question with this stuff.
Yeah, again, it does go back to, what's been psychologically built in as a man in your subconscious mind in your child state. I was watching, I don't know if you've seen the Warrior Week podcasts or not, but I was watching one, and one of the things the guy said, I love this guy, man. He said, look, there's a king inside of you. You just lost him at the age of 7. He's still there. That king is still there. He's on an island. You got to go find him because he is in tune with nature. He is in tune with the community. He is the king of his life, and you have been a slave, and the slave needs to understand that there's a king inside of that slave that you need to find.
Love
And
that allegory.
yeah, and it's very true because a lot of the constructs and the reasons why these behaviors are happening go back to the trauma aspects that are built from
Right.
In context to that 1 to 7 age time frame, when our unconscious subconscious is being stacked up,
Right.
in context of the programming.
Right. The trauma is a decrowning of your
Yes.
sovereignty.
Yeah, you've got to shed the skin of those versions of yourself that are based in the trauma aspects and trauma responses. First of all, you've got to recognize them. Why am I doing what the hell I'm doing?
So true.
And if you can't even recognize them by looking in the mirror, how are you ever going to burn through them and dissolve and burn through the veils of these illusion that you're in the programs and actually find as a man who the hell you are?
Boom. So moving on here to the next topic, and this is a big one, I think, is this concept of fatherlessness and lack of male role models. Because I would say an aspect of masculinity is also being a teacher. It's not to say that women can't teach or shouldn't be teachers or anything like that. It's energetics. Teaching is a masculine property, just like learning is, or being a student is feminine. Teaching is projecting, it's penetrative. Student, you're open to receive. It's all about energetics. So, men need a strong male role model to show them like how to be a man through the actual act of teaching itself, being masculine, and then teaching all the aspects of masculinity. And there is a tragic level of absence of a father being involved in children's lives, of the single mother situation. And this is a huge aspect of where are all the good men, right? This classic question. It's where are all the fathers should be the next question after that, because that's what's going to cultivate and grow that young person into a man that can, take charge, take personal responsibility for his actions, protect and provide for his family. Well, if your father, is non-existent, he taught you without him even being there how to be a loser, how to run away from responsibility, how
That's
to
right.
not protect and provide. That's exactly what he taught you, and that's his legacy. And if you don't break that cycle, you're going to do the same thing.
It's karmic in nature, man. It's ignorance.
My father committed
Yeah.
suicide when I was 3 years old. So just to
Yeah.
give y'all and the viewers out there some context from when I'm talking about suicide, and I'm talking about,
Yeah. Right.
being an only child as well. So I didn't even have any brothers to beat me up or anything
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
It was me and my mom. So
Yeah.
I was at a pretty big disadvantage of learning and figuring out what is masculinity. It's still very much a process for me. Even as a 36-year-old man, I'm still reclaiming my manhood one day at a time, one choice and one interaction at a time. It's a process.
Yeah.
Definitely. An ongoing process too. I mean,
Yeah.
grown men can have mentors and have these male role models that I think all through life. And this is something in cultures where you get to a certain age, you're 18 now, or you're 25, and then bam, you're done. That's the end of the road, when growing and learning is lifelong, right?
Yeah.
Even old men can have mentors of younger men. I mean, this is something that's really important. The social engineers know if you split that divide in the gender, now you got 50-50, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And one of the most important that I talk a lot about in my work is putting that wedge in the family dynamic. During the whole scamdemic, I went through a lot of emotions to see the lack of men and
Wow.
fathers
Mind
out
blowing.
there that just submitted and were emasculated,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that was a perfect time for men to step up and actively say no and protect their family and protect their children. This is why I get so passionate about it. And I had to do a lot of inner work during that time, seeing fathers slamming masks on their children or putting masks on their children and shit like that. I mean, it was brutal. It was definitely hard. But so the family dynamic is important. And what's the norm nowadays? The norm nowadays is split households. Mother and father aren't even together.
Right.
This is the norm. I'm in a co-parenting situation myself. Here's a problem that a lot of men have to deal with is the state in the child services and the child support, something that I have firsthand experience and a
Yeah.
lot of men go through. The state, the court system is against you because you are a man. You are
Right.
the father. They
That's
look
their
at the
role.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was just about to say that. That's their role. So automatically, the mother gets it's subsidized and gets certain there's a bias there. It's a pretty brutal system, but that's something that I personally have struggled in,
Mm.
and a lot of men have struggled in as well. The stigmatism, the label that the state puts you on, without even knowing who you are or knowing the family. I mean, the state shouldn't be involved at all, but this is what how they subsidize the mother. Come to us, we'll protect you, we'll provide for you, we'll give you money, all this kind of stuff. We'll put food on your table, we'll give you housing. And sure, there's a lot of men out there that are not fathers and that do not step up, but there's many out there that are getting raped and pillaged by the state.
That's an excellent point and very well
Yeah.
said.
I think the
If there's
key. Sorry.
one thing the
Oh,
state doesn't like is competition, and they will be the proxy for the masculine presence in society and in the household. They're the ones that will be, taking on that paternal fatherly role, not you. You get out of the way and you be a good slave. That's the ultimate emasculation to a man too, is the existence of the state. Religion's
Yeah.
another aspect, but I think the state takes the cake on this one for sure, because
Yeah.
it exercises the ultimate authority over him, and through coercion, that he has to submit and subjugate himself to be a good citizen.
Right.
Will,
Yeah.
what were you going to say?
True that.
Just to my end point on what I was talking about, then that was great, Logan, was it all depends on the response and reaction of the father during this arduous and tough time. A lot of parents, right? They especially fathers, now they're in a reactive state where they're spiteful and they want to get back at mom, and that affects the children, right?
Yeah.
There's not one time you're not being a role model for your children. You always are, including how you interact with external forces like the state. And I'm not saying back down by all means. I'm saying fight, but do it from a place of logic and reason, not emotional outbursts and spitefulness. Because that's what they're doing. They're sparking. As soon as the state gets involved, they're pitting mother and father in a war against each other. And
Right.
guess who suffers those consequences? The child. And the
Yeah.
child's all eyes on you, right? They're always looking at mom and dad and seeing how they're operating. So understanding truth and moral principles is extremely important. I took my daughter out into stores and had her experience me interacting with immoral people.
That's great.
It can go multiple ways. Fuck you! I'm not wearing a mask. God damn it! You can while out and all that kind of stuff. Sure,
That's
there were
not
some
masculine
heated
either,
times.
necessarily.
No, you're absolutely
Keeping your
right.
composure, emotional mastery, right? Not getting all just like ungrounded, right?
Exactly. Communicating, being grounded, keeping your composure, like you said, was really important, and understanding boundaries, and sometimes not backing down. But it was a really important lesson. We could tell our children a whole bunch of things, but to show them is where the power is. To be that example, that is where the empowering, because now they're experiencing it, they're understanding it for themselves.
It's again the pagan approach. It's one thing to tell, and especially when we explain things, we tend to just do it very like literally, linearly, like, oh, this is just it. This is how it is. But when you show them, you're embodying a story now. You're a character on the stage. They're seeing the two characters have this little scene play out, and then they get to see all the different outcomes. That's the natural law process,
Totally.
Problem, reaction, solution.
Exactly.
Good stuff, guys.
Yeah, it's nothing like being the witness to your children in context to your actions and the force of your actions having an impact on the reality field. I mean, that's the magic, and that's when they see that they're going, "Oh, I want to do that." I mean, it's powerful. It's a powerful, it's a powerful teaching tool to actually step out and do it and be the witness. That you do to the connection to your hardcore intelligence.
Yeah, and that's another extension of the masculine, is not just paying lip service to something, putting it into action.
Exactly.
You're a man of your word. You actually do what you say. There's alignment of your thoughts, your words, and your actions.
Right. And they're congruent and they're in alignment, and you're not compromising those qualities or those, the actual cosmic principles and natural law that you have cultivated in your life as a man.
Yeah.
And by not compromising and by staying on it and staying in alignment, your children see that.
Right.
See?
It's the authoritarian that says, do as I say, not as I do.
Yes.
The embodied human is going to actually put that into practice and show them, like, no, I'm about this.
Yeah. And the politicians do that shit every day, man.
They're the
epitome of it. Exactly.
That's totally why role models are so important. Single mothers out there, single fathers out there. A role model could be grandma, grandpa, uncle, aunt, friend. I mean, you could seek apprenticeships and for role models as well. But the key thing is understanding the psyche of the anima and animus. Anima being son, and the relationship to mother, or the mother figure, which is going to set the view the standard of the view and how they relate to women in their life, and then the animus, which is daughter to the father figure, which is going to set the template of interaction with males in their life. So you got to have both, right? I mean, in this day and age, it is tough. It is tough, but it's vital. Role models is vital.
That's one of the things I told my son. I said, if you're going to have a girlfriend, here's the questions I want you to ask her. I mean, we got plenty of daddy issues out there. You know what I'm saying? So these are the questions I want you to ask, because you need to know these questions, before you get to know someone. I mean, when you're stepping into the arena of a relationship, you better damn well know these questions and where that lady's coming from in context to her family units, because there could have been a lot of bullshit that happened, as a child, and you need to know, be honest with it, so there's a lot of different things, approaches that you can take, but coming down to the whole nitty gritty of it is that, how do you feel as a man? Who are are you really wielding your masculine force correctly? And that takes time. It takes dedication, tenacity, and staying on it with your mind and your state of mind, taking it back to the law of mentalism.
Definitely. Yeah, we can look at all the natural law principles in there too, right? What we were just talking about, even gender with role models, right? Like I think you said, Logan, right? Only a man can show a son, how to become a man. Same thing with a woman, right?
Yes.
A woman, only a woman can show a daughter, a girl, to become a woman. But that does not negate the anima and animus, right? It's this harmony is what it is. This harmony in the relationships. It's vital, and it's fractured nowadays on all aspects.
Totally, man. Totally fractured.
It's interesting what you said there. Just comment on that real quick. I would actually say it's still on the father to teach even the daughter about being a lady.
Mm-hmm.
The mother can still be an example, and especially when she's observing them interacting, relating, that's important. But as soon as the mother steps into a teacher role, it's almost a contradiction, because she's using a masculine modality of teaching to teach how to be feminine. So it's much more effective the other way. I see the father as the teacher role for the whole family. Teach boys to be men, teach girls to be women, and then they're both role models when it comes to actually practicing and seeing what healthy man to woman interactions relating looks like.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
And the child is learning all of that, right? The child stays in that student dynamic all the way up until, they're kind of coming into age. So they're seeing the dynamic between mother and father for sure.
Yeah.
Good points.
Good points.
I was just having a chat with my aunt yesterday. Really great conversation, catching up and all this. And there was a point she was telling me about some of her struggles with her oldest son, who's, he's, I believe, 24 now, still lives at home. And she came to tears telling me about how she could see that sometimes he would be disrespectful to her, either in the way he speak to her or hand gestures and things like that. And that she could actually see where he had been modeled this by how his father, her husband, had treated her sometimes when they were arguing. And of course, she said that he had taken responsibility for that as sometimes, and told him point blank, like, look, son, don't be like me. I messed up. That wasn't okay. That's not how you treat, a woman. But that's just an interesting, like, very recent anecdotal example that I could give to this.
Yeah.
Like, your children are mirrors, and they're looking to you. They don't understand the world. They're still learning. They're in total learning mode all the time. They're looking to you for, how do I behave in different situations? So you need to be very conscious of how you're acting.
Well, you said the key word, conscious. When you're unconscious, this is why, boys and girls, when they grow up and they start dating, when they date the opposite sex, there's a lot of characteristics that shadow the relationship they had with either their mother or father. Right. So, but it doesn't have to stay there. If you had, this is where daddy issues and mommy issues come from. If you're conscious of it, you're conscious of the relationship you had with your parents, and you can learn and grow from there. Absolutely. But this is what a lot of people are stuck in. Men are dating women that had the lack of what their mother had as well. Right. They're continuing the cycle. So it is this mirror, this correspondence, and vice versa with women to men.
And that's quote unquote normal.
That's the unconscious feedback loop.
Exactly, man.
Boom. Great. So the next thing and you've touched on this already a little bit, Will, is it's very related to what we talked about, and that's child support and custody bias when it comes to the court rulings strongly favoring the mothers for custody. They slap the men with all these ridiculous like child support, mandates and things like that. And I know you've got a lot of experience with this personally, Rodney. Perhaps you do too. I don't know. I've never been married. I have no kids. So but I've heard the horror stories from many, many friends over the years. I've seen the statistics. It's extremely out of balance.
Yeah. A brutal system. You can even look at CPS as well. That is, what a traumatic system. Unfortunately, I've known people that had their kids stripped from them.
Yeah.
As a man, and I'm going to open up here. One of my fears, probably my worst fear, right? And I look at fear as a challenge. Doesn't mean I'm not going to follow through on it. Having someone trying to take my child away from me, because I know what I would do. I wouldn't have it. I wouldn't have it whatsoever, and by any means necessary. So there's this organization that does this, takes children away from people, good people too. It's unreal. So this is why we do this work is for people to gain awareness of self-ownership and sovereignty, so they can try to vacate the state in any means necessary. Communication in co-parenting, I think, is vital. If you can get the other parent to understand or agree on principles, it might be beneficial for both parties to go that way. But the state, like I said, they subsidize mainly the woman. Free housing or discounted housing, food, cash aid, all this stuff. You really got to have respect and self-love for yourself to go, no, fuck you. I don't need that shit. I'm going to take care of myself, and I'm going to parent. I'm going to co-parent with the father, not the state. Yeah. And I respect people when they go that route, and I get it. Times can be hard for sure. But there's still a gradient in there on how much you're going to use against the other parent. And unfortunately, the majority is it's used as a weapon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, totally. I've seen this happen with many of my friends, and it's difficult to watch, even though they're not my children. It's just seeing my friends go through that and how their children are weaponized against them by their mothers. Jana is here saying, I work in social work in a conservative town, and the courts don't favor men more than women as much anymore. In fact, I haven't seen that in quite a while. And of course, I don't dispute that that's your experience. And it may be true that at large, those numbers are going down. I think it very much varies depending on what location, the jurisdictions.
Conservative town. I think that's a key word.
Yeah.
I'm in California, so that says a lot.
Polar opposite there.
Exactly.
And then she said, I'll also come work in CPS for a week if you want to see the reality and get out of the stereotypes. If you can follow up with what you mean by that, and what are the realities that you're referring to? But again, these men are coming from personal experience, so it's not just stereotypical. It's literally anecdotal. But again, it's definitely not black and white, and I'm not here to talk about this in a absolute position. It just varies. There's a lot of different aspects to this, but it is a topic worth mentioning, and it is something that is at play at some degree at large. It's at least worth bringing up, as this is something that many men do and have gone through, and that's the purpose of this episode, is to just look at some of the experiences that men have to endure, de facto in real life.
And even, Jana works in this field. I mean, she's got to understand that women or men can call on the other parent. They can call CPS and report some erroneous thing, and CPS for sure will probably check that out. So this is what the type of things that I'm talking about is CPS can be used for. My good friends that had their children taken away from their moral into natural law, beautiful people. The neighbors did not like how they lived, called CPS. They followed up, and the state took care of it from there. So that is going on, and it is used as a weapon for
it's weaponizing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And sure. And not a blanket statement. Sure. There's some children that are in horrible situations where CPS comes in and gets involved. And yeah, that might be the case as well. But we're talking about using it as a weapon is kind of the key point.
Mm-hmm.
It really is a breakdown of the family units. I mean, taking it all the way to the children, the father, the mother, the grandparents, their grandparents. It's an attack upon the family unit that's actually going on this planet, trying to break apart, the bond between the masculine and feminine that's supposed to be there, and as long as we allow this as men, because it's our responsibility, as long as we allow this to continue on, it's going to continue on. It's going to get worse. I mean, it's at a crisis point at this right now. Think about what it's going to be in 5 to 10 years from now if we don't actually step up as men and own the responsibility of our families. That's another thing. Not men just not taking care of their families, even if they have a divorce, not actually taking care of their kids, walking away from the responsibility because they're so blinded by their own trauma-based responses in their own life. They just give it the middle finger and say, "Fuck it, I don't want to deal with it."
Yeah, exactly.
That's another, aspect to this as well, that pressure,
And certainly, as Green Mountain Girl pointed out, court favors whomever can pay a lawyer more in general. I'm sure that has some effect on it as well, but we're kind of just talking about the general tendency of bias here. There's going to be different variables that lean things one way or another. Jana says, that's why I mentioned conservative town generally favors moms. I don't know. What do you guys think? I would think that liberal areas tend to favor that because that's the proxy for the father. The left is the feminine area, right, as manifestation of right brain imbalance.
Yeah.
So they're going to favor the feminine more, in my estimation, psychologically speaking. She then said, we get bogus custody calls all the time. Dads every bit as much as moms. I've never seen a removal on bogus stuff. That's why we investigate. Now, you're speaking from experience, and I'm not gonna to say anything that I'm not going to invalidate your experience. I believe that what you're saying is true about your experience, but I also would submit that perhaps because you're involved, you have firsthand experience that may be making you a bit biased to the bigger picture at large. Because, I mean, you could just go on something like TikTok and see just endless videos of CPS harassing people over the most ridiculous things. I mean, there's no shortage of real evidence to look at this. So
Correct.
Perhaps you might want to look outside your own experience to form a more holistic opinion.
Yeah,
that may be true from where you're at, and that's great. I hope that at least some places there's actually some merit to what that service is providing, but at large, the government does not care about children. It's not there to protect. It's a monster of tyranny and pain.
I'll go a step further. CPS shouldn't exist. Same as any government institution shouldn't exist. It's an immoral system. So there's lots of content on there showing the immoral and the violations of CPS, just as there's a lot of videos out there of the immoral and the violations of highway patrol, right?
Yeah,
So I mean, the state government in its concept is immoral, artificial, and should not exist. And guess what? You're in the natural world. Bad shit happens. It always is going to happen. This is the playground, right? This is the school that we live in this reality field.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but that does not mean that there should be a control system that violates people on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's why we're doing the podcast, man.
Yep.
We're here to teach. We're here to show, hey, man, this is, you've got to own your own morality, and we're dealing with them as a man.
Yeah.
And when you can do that and you can step up to the plate and be that man and own it, it's going to solve a lot of problems. A lot of problems. You're not going to need CPS. You're not going to need all this bullshit, because you have actually stepped up and taken ownership of your own self as a man, and then bringing things into a right alignment, and that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's why we're teaching.
And Jenna, I appreciate your comments and your perspective. I don't want you to feel like I'm picking on you or anything. And it's good that you do agree in general about the government. And I agree also that many don't really think about the atrocities that happen to children. I mean, it's the same reason I showed that clip of circumcision in the beginning, because it's so easy to ignore, out of sight, out of mind, pretend it's not there. And when it comes to child abuse, like this applies to natural law and morality just like anything else. So anything the state does that is in alignment with natural law and morality is technically not wrong, but it doesn't make it special just because the state is doing it either. They don't have any more rights or special abilities than any other person. So when it comes to protecting the children who are innocent, they can't even protect themselves. I think there's a legitimate place for some role of service to look at these things, but having that power highly centralized is a very dangerous aspect, because then who watches the watchman, right? That's the ultimate question.
Well, that's
if this was more community based, right? Cities is very unnatural. If people had more sense of community and tribe, then those things would be being witnessed by people that actually know those children. They care about the families, the people that live in their community.
Yes.
They're going to have a stake and interest to actually care and pay attention to, are these bad things going on, and what needs to be done about that. Because I do agree, if someone is abusing a child, they are revoking their rights to be a proper
parent.
custodian
Exactly.
and a steward of that child. They need to
sure.
be, something needs to be done about that. So hopefully that
I agree with that, Logan, so much, man. We have that the lack of community in my town.
Yeah.
In my town of Antioch, and this happened probably 10 years ago. I didn't live here then. There was 2 kids that were raised from 2 years old all the way up to 19 in the dungeon of a house, and none of the neighbors knew. Right? How is that possible? How is that possible? It's because there's that lack of community. Neighbors don't talk to each other anymore.
Exactly.
Right? The people just threw McDonald's down there every day.
Yeah.
Until the oldest daughter, she was 19, and I think her brother was 16 or 17. She finally, in this darkness, grew the courage and escaped, and took her brother and escaped on their own. So the point being is that the lack of community and not knowing our neighbors and knowing the people in town, you wouldn't need these type of institutions for that, because people know each other. If something's good, they know, Mike and Joanne down there are abusing their kids. The other neighbors, the other members of the community go and get those kids.
Yeah.
Right.
And it doesn't even have to be this binary, like, oh, these kids are mistreated, we need to just rip them away from their family. If you're operating from a community basis that is based in care and actually looking out for everyone's best interest, and not just some kind of authoritarian power trip, it starts with the conversation. Like, hey, I just couldn't help but notice your daughter is always wearing the same clothes and she's really dirty and this and that. Like, that's a problem. I'm concerned about this. You're coming
Yeah.
from concern for them and the child. It's not just like, let's get the pitchforks and, rah, 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 and go take the kids away. That's what community is about. People,
Communication.
Yeah.
communication.
Unity.
How can I help
Great
you?
point.
How can I help you get better with this?
Right.
Is
What
there
can
some
we
way I can
do?
teach you to
Right.
help you to bring your situation into a better space?
Do you need clothes? I've got extra clothes in the closet we can donate to you to give you more, more resources, that kind of thing. Exactly. Man, great stuff, man.
And CPS, just real quick, Jana, and I totally appreciate your comments too. She said CPS by law has to place kids with family members. That not here in California. That's not the case. The friends that I know, they took their 4 kids away from them, and they didn't give them to any family members. The family members that wanted the kids, they gave them to 2 cops.
What?
Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
That's rough.
Totally.
Wow. Yeah, we really have lost our sense.
So I think it depends, like Jana, like you were saying, I agree with that. She's in a conservative town. Definitely depends on location and stuff like that. The gradient, the level of it, for sure.
Yeah. Excellent conversation, gentlemen.
Great comments in the chat too.
Yeah, I love this. This is a real conversation. This is exactly what I want this show to be about. Every single week, we're here to bring these topics up and just have a conversation. It's just as much about all you guys out there in the audience, in the chat, as it is about us. We're not anything special. We're just trying to bring light on these important topics that in hopes that it'll bring some value and awareness to someone else. So again, if you're enjoying this, hit the like button real quick. That takes 0.2 seconds. It's the easiest and best way you can support this channel, help us grow. Of course, subscribe, click the notification bell, and share this with a friend, right? Man or woman. Maybe somebody needs to consider some of this information. I definitely have conviction that part 2 and 3 are going to be just as powerful. We're going to keep going here for a little bit longer if you guys are good with that.
Cool.
I got a few more minutes.
Okay. I have a few more points that I think need to be involved here. And regarding the Q&A segment, we're going to skip that on this one, but I think maybe we could either put it on the end of part 3 if there's time there, or we could even do a 4th part that's just the call-in show, and just depends if there's enough demand for it. So let me know in the comments, what would you prefer? A little bit towards the end of part 3 or its own show? I just don't want to do it and then there not be anyone, taking me up on it, without any preparation on a different topic, that sort of thing. But just curious about that. So the next thing I think would be good to touch on here is, the advent of dangerous jobs, dangerous workplace conditions, that typically are male dominated, so to speak. It's not that they're dominating anything. That's the thing, is that women don't want these jobs, and for good reason. Men are just better equipped. They're physically stronger. They're tougher. They're willing to take risks. It's not that women aren't willing to take risks, but these are, again, we're talking about energetics. We're talking about tendencies and archetypes. The warrior archetype is masculine. So we're not just talking about roofers and truck drivers, but especially military, and aside from being, the perspective that military are order followers and all this, but let's just take something like the draft, for example. Maybe that's not active right now. It very well could be again sometime in the future. It happens in other countries as well. So, this isn't just an American show. We're talking about global issues, right? We're talking about the prison planet of Earth and all of the problems being looked at holistically. So, a lot to get into there. But yeah, what do you guys think?
Go ahead, Will.
What's the question? Repeat the question again.
Well, we're talking about dangerous jobs.
Oh, yes. Got it. Yeah, I mean, there's so many. Oil, fishing might be one. Plumber, carpentry can be dangerous as well. I mean, there's a lot of heavy machinery and stuff like that for sure. Construction, absolutely. My old neighbor he was the guy that changed the lights on the top of the tall light towers that planes see when they fly by, on mountain ranges and stuff like that.
Scary.
Electricians for sure.
Yeah.
That's another one. Yeah. What'd you say? Military?
Yeah. Yeah. Just men going to war, basically.
Yeah.
Of course, that's changed a lot over the past, several decades. There's a lot more women in the military, but it's still largely, biased towards men. At least definitely more than 50%. And there's still more expectations on men. I mean, you want to talk about sexism, the physical standards, the fitness standards are different for men and women in the military. I was in the Air Force. A lot of people don't know that, but they literally have different fitness standards for how many push-ups, how you have to do, how fast you have to run a certain distance and things like that for men and women, because they know there are physical differences.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I look at these old pictures of the men on top of the beams, on top of the skyscrapers that they're building, and they're having lunch, and they're sitting on top of the beam, on top of the skyscrapers with their lunch, and they're just lined up with this, these are all dangerous, dangerous jobs. I mean, painting water towers. I mean, there's so many different jobs that are done by the masculine force that are dangerous, and we put ourselves in these positions. But again, this is the testosterone aspect, bridges, buildings, roads, construction, that all doesn't get done by estrogen. It's the testosterone factor, that we're dealing with. And this is the war upon the masculine to the testosterone factor in context to what they're doing, I mean, the whole transgender thing, the whole war against the masculine force itself. It's time for us to rise up. I take testosterone supplements. I mean, it's not like testosterone, but it helps to free up the free testosterone within my body, because as a man, I have to have testosterone. I'm older than you guys. I'm in my 50s, so, that's when that starts to decline somewhat, so I have my mind upon testosterone supplements that help my body, exercising and keep that free testosterone in my body, and I think that's part of it too, in context to actual work and work ethics and doing these type of jobs as well. I mean, geez, we're under so much stress as it is, context to the duress of government and state-run organizations, as men in general. I mean, just dealing with the CPS bullshit, on top of it. So there's a lot there that men have to deal with every day, dude, in their lives. I mean, it's a lot, man, if you really break it down, and bullet points.
Even something like engineering, for example, there's this so much about these stereotypes and how they're harmful. And it's like, no one's saying women can't be engineers or can't be good at math. It's just simply acknowledging the fact that men are better at it. Like, statistically, there's things that women are better at, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be. I love that there's differences, that we each have our strengths and weaknesses that we can come together and utilize to maximize and become the greater than the sum of our parts. So, something like engineers, men are just better equipped mentally. They have better left brain faculties of design and and mathematics and things like that. So of course, when you look out in society, of course you're going to see a man's world, because it is men that are kind of building things. But that's okay. Like, the women are homemakers, right? Men can be society makers, and the women be homemakers, and that's fucking beautiful to
Capricorn
me. I don't see a problem.
Yeah,
I don't see a problem with that.
No,
that's how I look at it. It's complementary, right? It's yin and yang. A man will lay the foundation and build the walls. A woman will make it a home.
Yep.
So it's,
yeah.
I mean, there's in my line of work of construction, I go in these new developments where they're just popping up these cookie cutter homes, hundreds of homes all the time. And I can't even recall seeing a woman in building the house on the premises. I mean, maybe once in a while, every blue moon, you might see one, but this is a good thing. It's that active principle, and it's not one or the other. It's both in harmony, in symbiosis, the dance that men and women do. This is nature. This is creation. That's what it's about. It's about understanding and coming to know this on a personal level and harmonizing with it. This is how we're going to create a healthy society.
Right. And that it does take it back to the Capricorn Cancer aspect in context to Cancer being the home and what you actually put in the home, and Capricorn being the structure that's built, you know? And so that's, it is in alignment with the cosmos, in context to that. And that's how it's supposed to wield, men handle stress better, I think, in context to, logic and reason.
Yes.
For sure. Like air traffic controller. That's another one. That's a high stress job. If you're looking at, bringing planes in, and all the activity that goes on in the air, that's a high level, high stress job. I'll tell you, being a chef, I've been a chef my whole life. Being a chef is a high stress job. And people don't realize how much stress there is in being a chef. That's why there's a lot of men chefs.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It makes sense because it's not just about the cooking. If you're cooking at home, it's a much different environment. You get to take your time, put your drops of love and your feminine care into every aspect of that, because you don't have Gordon Ramsay yelling at you and fucking shit catching on fire or whatever.
10 orders coming in. You got to use that time management and logic and reason to kind of work that out.
I've had times when I've had the line going, and there's, we're trying to feed 200 people in the dining room, and 7 banquets going on that have to be out that day, and so you're dealing with a high level of organization, stress, logic, reason, being able to compartmentalize things, and time management, so you've got a lot going on, and that's why there's a lot of men chefs. That's the reason.
Yeah.
I like to reduce things down. This is kind of how my intellect works with problem solving. Just imagine you have a farmstead, you're detached from society and you have a farmstead, just you and your wife and the kids, right? Who's going to lug the wood 5 miles from one area back to the farmstead? Is your wife going to do it, or are you going to do it?
Exactly.
So there's these physical activities that a man can handle better than a woman. And there's things that a woman can do way better than a man. And it's not, and in society, they promote the finger pointing. Oh, well, we can do that. We should do this. You should do that. When in reality, it's the harmony. It's recognizing. And it's funny that in culture nowadays, just look at sports with the whole the inverted gender and gender fluidity and stuff. It's like you have men competing in the Olympics as women, and they're like breaking world records by fucking 10 times. It's just like, it's so disrespectful.
Man. It is disrespectful.
We're going to get into that in the women's segment of this
totally
movement,
is.
and it's an insult to true womanhood for sure. This, like you were saying, Will, it's about the homogenization of society. Everyone's trying to act like men can be women if they want. They can do womanly things if they want. And that's true to a degree. Men can do feminine things. Women can do masculine things. And that's the point I wanted to drive here. It's not that they can't. This is how natural law works. Natural law is not preventative. It's that there's tendencies. There's a nature to things, to beings, and there's consequences for different things. So for a woman to do masculine things, she has to embody her masculine energy. That goes against her instincts. It's where she doesn't feel as safe. So again, it's not that a woman can't do math or that she can't be amazing and outperform lots of men at math. It's that she's running masculine energy. She's running the left side of her brain.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not an optimal energetic for a woman. It's typically goes against their nature. So again, sure, and of course in society now they're pushing women to be more masculine. Of course there's going to be way more women rushing into these more masculine things, right? But that doesn't mean that's truly what the feminine desires at the most basic, like primordial level. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here with that.
My father was a lineman. He was a foreman in a lineman. And so he built, electrical lines in the county, growing up and set poles in and strung wire and all this. There weren't any women on the crew, man. There just weren't, because that's hard work, climbing poles, stringing wire, setting poles in, that is very physical hard work, but on the flip side, the women were inside doing the clerical work, and taking care of that end of it, and so growing up, to me, my dad was being a lineman. I saw him as, a man, like, wow, man, this guy can climb poles and do all this crazy stuff. We, putting in sprinkler systems and sidewalks, and we did all, went and got wood and cut wood. I did all this stuff with my dad, and so it taught me a work ethic as I will say that with my dad, even though he's quite a narcissist, he taught me a work ethic that I still have to this day. To get it done, to pound it out, to be that masculine force to make it happen.
Values. I love it, man.
The values there, exactly, in context to work ethic, exactly, man.
Yeah. It's there it is. That comment, I love it. I'd love to see a biological male give birth naturally. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But it's funny in the inversion of society. I mean, the inversion of nature in society, right? That the social engineers, you can't really invert nature. All you can do is, it's influencing people to invert their nature. And then there's consequences with that. But, when you look at birth rates, how they've plummeted.
Yeah.
Men or women or men, I guess. No, I'm just kidding. Having trouble getting pregnant. It's when you're in opposition to nature, right? There's going to be consequences. And that's my point, really. Even when women, with the increase of testosterone, for them and all the other chemicals and adjuvants and all this shit going around that they're putting in their body, they're polluting the substrate of creation. They're having trouble getting pregnant. Same thing with men. The seed isn't
not
potent.
being able to potency, right?
Their seed isn't potent because all the shit that they're putting within themselves. And you look at ED, erectile dysfunction is a huge problem nowadays. Don't worry, they got 10 pills for those. You could take that and you'll be rocked up in no time.
Create the problem and sell you a solution, but it's not a solution at all. It's just something that causes 10 more problems that we have 10 more solutions we'll sell you.
Exactly.
And on it goes.
How pharmaceuticals work, man. Give me one, take two more.
Yep. Yeah, and it's interesting, you guys, how you took this comment. I would like to know what her intention was with because there's kind of two ways you could take this. She's pointing at the word naturally was there, so that's nice. But does that mean she's talking about this kind of trans, like men can have babies kind of thing, or like naturally, like without any, assistance or chemical, pain numbing, this sort of thing? I'm curious what her intentions, but to couple that with another comment up here, where was that? Which sex is stronger in general? That's obvious. Women create life, men protected in general. Yes, to a degree, but I personally think women create life as a bit of a kind of a short-sighted perspective, because
it's only one half.
It takes a man and a woman to create life.
Right. Yes.
Women do birth the child. They actually are the portal.
They are.
That there's a Stargate that brings, a life into the physical world. And by all means, that is fucking magical. I love that. It's amazing. It's something men cannot do. Again, I want this purpose to this series. So regardless how you meant it, or I don't want to make assumptions of which way, it did seem a little bit like, I'd love to see a man give birth, that kind of thing. Maybe that's not how you meant it. But just to reiterate, the purpose of me making this is to try to get away from any sort of that competitive, which one's better, which one's more oppressed type of thinking, and really try to cultivate mutual respect for the challenges that are unique to each. And then how can we actually support each other in that understanding, in that acknowledgement of those unique challenges? And how can we basically make life a little bit less difficult? Because goodness knows, like it's a bitch, right? And we are all dealing with shit of different kinds. Each person is fighting their own unique battles, but we're all in this together at the end of the day. So,
Right.
I want the purpose of this, the takeaway, to be how can we kind of see each other, really see each other and those unique challenges, and how can we be more understanding of those and kind of supportive of those things.
Yes. Good point.
Definitely not meant for offense, she says. And that's why I said I didn't want to make any assumptions, but you could see how one could, especially if someone's choosing to come from their wounding and just assume like everything is an attack, everything is some kind of slight towards men. It's very easy to get caught in that loop. And then it just builds, because then that person throws shade back, and then suddenly you're in this dick measuring contest.
Yeah,
And that just doesn't, it's so fruitless. It leads nowhere good.
Yeah, bantering back and forth doesn't do anything. It just makes it worse.
Yeah, that's why I think the whole gender crisis is a really big deal. For someone to claim they're a man and then get pregnant and have birth, it's an atrocity. First of all, women giving birth is one of the most sacred things in life, in this reality.
Yes, it is.
And I honor that with my whole being. But for someone to say, I'm a man, and I got pregnant and I can give birth, it belittles that. It's trying to, that's true disrespect and offensiveness. I would love to see more women stand up to this.
Yeah.
And men, mainly men, talk about this like what we're doing today. I mean, it's really important.
Yeah.
And men can get menstrual cycles and all this bullshit. Like, that is mental illness, because you're detached from reality. You're detached from truth.
Mm.
The sun shines upon the moon, my friend.
Good one.
Yeah,
Let's see. So maybe one last thing we can touch on here. I know we're getting running pretty long today. I warned everyone that was going to probably happen, and I'm here for it. Like I think everything we've talked about is very like an essential aspect of painting this whole picture that we're looking at, and I want to do the same level of thoroughness and due diligence for the women's side as well next week.
It's a great topic, man.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Appreciate you. So the last thing we can kind of wrap this up on is the idea of responsibility. Now, again, I'm coming from a place of pro gender roles. It doesn't have to be some oppressive thing or the toxic version of gender roles. So again, there's two areas where this can already go awry, and it's important. You're looking at the nuance. You're not having a knee-jerk reaction or a black and white perspective. I'm talking about the gender roles that embody the aligned masculine and feminine, as they should be, not the toxic versions of them, and not mixing those things together in the same list.
Right.
I'm as anti-toxic masculine as the most lefterson. Like that's not what I'm about. So we're talking about, true masculinity in this case is the role of leadership and provision, and those are roles of responsibility. Again, it's not that a woman can't be responsible. It's that it's not really what she wants. She doesn't want that burden of responsibility. She wants to be free. And putting responsibility on a woman is going to dim her shine. It's going to pull her out of her feminine radiance, which is her gift. The man's gift is service through leadership, provision, all those kind of things. The woman's gift is radiance, and if she's thrust into or taking on herself a masculine role, she's by nature going to be not in her feminine essence and not bringing about that freedom. The feminine needs to be unencumbered by that to fully be in that freedom and that radiance. So hopefully that gives some context to what I'm saying here. And just taking it back to this idea of responsibility. It's ironic that the wounded feminine wants control and is afraid of being vulnerable, whereas the wounded man is afraid of responsibility, of leadership. He feels safer being vulnerable and just capitulating his feelings, like Rodney said, and not taking that personal responsibility, because ironically, leadership is the male version of vulnerability. Really think about that one. For the feminine, it's expressing vulnerably from the feelings, from the heart space of just like, these are my feelings without any kind of attachment, blame, judgment, outcome, any control, any of that. The man's version of vulnerability is taking responsibility for taking, because when you step into leadership, you're taking responsibility for the outcome of what you're leading towards, right? You're risking rejection by asserting a directive or a suggestion or whatever have you, because you're vulnerable to somebody saying, that's stupid, or why should I listen to you, or whatever, to be disrespected in that way. A man's innate need is to be respected and to be allowed or respected in his leadership, whereas a woman's need is actually to be cherished and to be served. Those are two totally different dynamics.
Right.
Men and women have different needs. That's really what this comes down to. So again, men can be feminine, but that's not fulfilling their true masculine needs, and vice versa. So just kind of my point with this bringing up, and I'll let you guys riff on this a bit, is just, I would like for women to appreciate that willingness for men to take responsibility, to bear that burden, to be vulnerable in their masculine way of fearing rejection, of being, emasculated or subjugated in some way, because they have to put themselves out there to set themselves up for them. That's why it feels safer to just kind of, whenever you want to do, babe, right? Just kind of go along to get along and that kind of thing. So, yeah, what do you guys think about that?
Go ahead, Will.
Oh, you're muted, man.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, well said. I really like that and resonate with that for sure. I mean, just looking at responsibility, right? The ability to respond. Now, of course, this can be looked at internally in the self, but also externally to the world. So your ability to respond as a man or to your wife would be the male aspect. I love that the masculine quality to serve the feminine essence, that's powerful. I really like that. And there's almost kind of healing, right? Healing means wholeness, to complete.
Yes.
To be healed. So when you have that unification of man and woman, right? And in the self, it's the alchemical wedding. But in the external with man and woman, you're in that relationship. There is almost a wholeness, a completion, when it's in balance, right? When the polarities are in balance, there is a level of healing to kind of the world, or this experience that we have incarnated on and growing together and evolving. So it almost it adds that level of evolution. Look at evolution, the word, right? It's a forward progress. But if you take the words EVOL and you switch them back, you got love. So if you look at evolution kind of going backwards, even the TION, ion, right. Energy, ion, going backwards, right. You have the ion, the energy of love. So you have like this masculine and feminine of evolution, forward, penetrating progress, and then the internal, the receiving of love. So it kind of makes this figure 8 something that just came up on top of my mind, but it's a beautiful thing. I think it's the ultimate unification in this reality is a healthy relationship of man and woman. And this is what we need to see more of.
And that's why the core wound is betrayal. Because this is the separation between us and them, and pitting the competition aspect between the masculine and feminine force. And this is the virus, man, in context to that. So we actually, by becoming the man or the positive charge in context to initiation or initiatory energies to serve is powerful, because that does set the receiving end of it for the woman. She is the receiver of the penetration. See?
Yes.
Yeah.
She becomes the moon, or the receiver of the energy and context to that. See? And so this is what creates the union of the moon and the sun in context to, what we call, a union of a new moon or that aspect, because sun and moon are conjunct in the sky. They're kissing. They're coming together. See? So they're coming into a union. That's powerful.
Looking at it on the societal level, right? It's like, look, the human condition is slavery and duress. So freedom just isn't given to you. You have to earn it.
Yes.
You have to take it. That's masculine.
Yes.
But you also need care. This is where the feminine comes in. You have to care to do that. So, I've said this in many talks that the uptick of women getting more caring and embodying that feminine energy is important, because there's huge influence. The man wants to serve. Well, if the woman cares about morality and truth and principles and freedom in the world, that's going to have a huge an effect on the man.
Yeah, I see. Again, I like to take it back when you're looking at these polarities, as the yin and yang is such a great depiction of that, because you have that little dot in each of the masses that offset and balance out. So they're still what they are. The black is the black side, the white is the white side, but there's that little dot that creates the balance internally in form of relationship as they're coming together.
Yeah.
And I see that dot as the heart space, because that's the thing that brings that balance. The heart is the center of the chakra system. You've got the top three and the bottom three. They come together in the middle in the heart space, and everything is activated and comes online. And this is where true holistic heart-based intelligence comes from. So a man that's in his assertive, dominant, energy, but is not operating from the heart space.
Right.
That's that state of imbalance, because he's no longer acting out of service to the feminine and the greater good of the unit. He's acting out of self-service from his own wounding.
Yeah.
And I want it as a couple of great...
and he's in his lower base self in context to that. He's
right.
They're not bridged. So his heart core intelligence is offline. And he doesn't have an eye to see the need of the feminine at that point as well.
There's a couple of great comments here I wanted to touch on too. They bring up good points. Janice says females can evolve to what they need to survive. Thus, the stereotype of manipulative in the toxic form is the intelligence gone dark, usually due to abuse. I agree that females can evolve. Well, they can adapt is the word I would choose, to do what they need to survive, because survival is a masculine role or purpose, because you have survival and reproduction, right? Those are the two pairs that come together when you're looking at this. There's anything that comes in pairs, a good chance that one will be a masculine thing and one will be a female thing, right? Sun and moon, etc.
Yeah.
So survival is the masculine role. That's why protector, provider, right? To keep from dying is the male's role, and the feminine is nurture and reproduction and propagation. So prevent from death, keep from just dying out as a human species. And then the feminine is perpetuate, right? That's why it's all about connection, community, care, nurture, because it's like feeding the life that is preserved by the masculine and allowing it to thrive and bloom into its best self and to keep, continuing on, propagating. So survival and propagation are the kind of the two sides. So the feminine doesn't want to be forced to survive. That's the whole point. A masculinization of a woman is a survival instinct due to trauma, like you just said, due to abuse. But that's not the highest self. We need to heal that trauma so we can be safe in our own bodies and trusting in those instinctual needs and desires and honoring those.
Yeah, I mean the sun shines on the earth so it can survive. Without the sun, there is no survival on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
That's the masculine force in
True.
context. See, without the moon, the water cannot be moved and it becomes stagnant as the moon moves the tides back and forth. The emotional aspect in context to the feminine. And so that's the self-care that has to be implemented from that feminine force to the masculine force,
And the rain and the emotion that
comes with it. The water
nutrifies
exactly.
and nurtures and allows things to flourish.
So the water is the element you need to make things actually flourish and grow. But without the sun, you got no life.
Yeah. And Tommy here says he's had a couple of female bosses and found them more aggressive and ruthless than male bosses. It's if they had to out the male men, it was grim, to be honest. And that's just it. Women can be masculine, but it's unnatural. They're forced into that due to a trauma response. It's not going to be congruent. They're not a masculinized woman is not operating from her heart space and her feminine self-worth because to be forced into that is an extension of a diminished self-worth that she has to do things that are unnatural to her in order to survive and make ends meet. Right. So, of course, it's going to be miscalibrated and out of balance and actually, ironically, show up as toxic masculinity. Look at the feminists in general. They're so against toxic masculinity, but they are the poster child of toxic masculinity.
The epitome of it.
Embodied in a woman's body.
Yeah.
You close off that heart space for a woman, right? And then there goes the empathy. So what are you? You're super apathetic and aggressive and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that's it.
And of course, nowadays looking at the neo-feminisms and stuff, they're waving the flag of empathy, right? But they're the complete opposite. This is what the dark animus is as well. Or even looking at it as a like a mythological creature, that would be the siren.
Yes. Yeah, the succubus.
The succubus, the succubi,
Take it to the Norse, it's Gulveg, when you're dealing with the birth of the dark goddess, in context to that, or Lilith, if you want to take it to another mythos,
Exactly.
When you're dealing with that type of thing, So it can get very toxic, because the woman's taking a role that they're not supposed to be taking. Michael Tessarian talks about this with Dragon Mother and the female Illuminati.
Totally
gets into that,
Yeah, really, really important stuff.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point.
Brett Bernhoft says, what are your opinions of modern American women? Very in line with what we're talking about here. And I would broaden this a bit to Western women. I definitely think places like the UK, Europe, even Australia, things like that. There's very much a push to masculinize women, right? They're coming from a place of unconscious trauma due to toxic masculinity, right? Men who are abusers, who are either hyper masculinized without that heart base. So they're dominant, they're order followers, they're abusers, things like that. They're narcissist control freaks, or their masculinity has been utterly eradicated and they're so incompetent, lazy, cowards that the woman is forced to step into the masculine role just to try to make things work and balance things out. But that's only just going to perpetuate this dysfunctional kind of unholy marriage, so to speak.
Yeah,
absolutely. That plays into the single mother having to play both roles, in the household because there's no father, I mean,
Right.
you know, it just snowballs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great point, Jana, because
You know?
without men stepping into their leadership, without taking charge, taking
Yep.
actions, it's like the woman just feels like, well, nothing would get done if I didn't,
Right.
step into that role. And oftentimes, unfortunately, that would be true. But the answer isn't to become masculine, ladies. This is only going to bring more of what you don't want. The only answer is to reclaim your feminine essence, and that's going to attract a truly masculine man because he
Right.
sees you value yourself. No
Yes.
matter how things are, you're not allowing yourself to betray your instincts and your feminine self-worth. That's very attractive to a truly masculine, balanced man. And then he's going to step in and be exactly the leader and provider and caring, father figure that you need for you and your family.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I guess it works both ways as well, because men that are so emasculated, they're afraid of their own masculinity. They're afraid of embodying that because it's so been vilified and demonized. They're afraid to even show that. And so they kind of slip into that role as well, because these women are like already in their masculine roles. That lane is taken. So, people are so afraid of being alone. They're so prone towards codependent relationships,
Yes.
codependent dynamics. They need somebody to even feel complete. And so it's ironic they're using that masculine role of the feminine as a proxy for their own masculinity because they can't derive that from within. So it's just really fucked up and inverted. And then it creates almost this, like, it kind of works in a way because you got the woman is kind of the man and the man is kind of the woman, and but both are like in a state of internal chaos and like anguish because they're going
Opposition.
against their own instincts, and those are always there. That voice inside, your innate wisdom, is always there. It's just the longer you ignore it, the more it fades into a whisper until it's just a little child down in your dungeon that you don't even hear anymore, but it's still there and it's still suffering until you let them free and give them permission to exist and be what they really are.
Yes.
Man, that's why I love like conversations like this, right? Because it's all about remembering.
Yeah.
Healing
we know this stuff.
Healing the divide of masculine and feminine, men and women, and to create healthy relationships. Like, this is what I ultimately think needs to happen. Freedom-minded individuals, healthy-minded individuals need to come together, right?
Yes.
And we need to get to a place of conscious conception. The depopulation agenda of, the world's so fucked up, don't have kids. That's part of the depopulation agenda, right? You got to do the work individually, and then we attract this, right? When you get to a certain place of resonance and in harmony with nature, then you definitely attract the other, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I believe.
Yeah, I agree.
Jana mentioned seeing a microcosm of this with OnlyFans. Women making millions off dudes while basically doing nothing. This is it's a great example again.
Great one.
Of the toxic version of these archetypes. So this is the man in his provisional role, but what is it? But the woman has all the power. The woman is in charge and in control, and the man is supplicating. Oh, please notice me. Please do that thing I like with the underwear and this and that. I'll throw money at you. Please
show your
right.
feet. Show your
Right.
feet.
Exactly. It's totally flipped. That's a really interesting kind of observation, because this is a huge aspect. There's so many, people that are not only cam girls, but are just men that are users of this platform to sort of kind of get their needs met, but in a very unhealthy, codependent, toxic way.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's all about the needs, right?
Yep.
And being conscious
Everything.
of this.
Yeah, northeast. It's the needs. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
Good one.
Good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything human beings do is to fulfill some type of need, one way or another. and it could be a good thing or a bad the needs themselves are not wrong.
No,
We all have
absolutely not.
innate human needs. It's how you're choosing to meet those, and is it coming from a healthy place or an unhealthy place, right? It's not wrong to have the need for love, right? But then to go and try to fill that love hole by watching porn or throwing money at women, at strange women online that you don't
Right.
even know,
Right.
that's a very unhealthy way to meet the need. The need itself is not wrong, but this is why self-awareness is everything. We need to be looking at this of like, what is compelling your behavior? Where is that coming from? And is this behavior actually good for me? Is it sustainable? Is it healthy?
Right,
Exactly.
exactly. And in inverted kingdoms, the queen actually runs the show in context, behind the scenes and telling the king what to do,
Mhm.
and we see that a lot in history, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So when you're dealing with this particular subject, you realize that when things are congruent and in alignment, how beautiful it fucking is, man.
Yes.
So beautiful when the man and the woman are clicking together in harmony and in union, and things are in alignment with cosmic principle and natural law, and things are flourishing, and we have the emperor and the empress working together to create a world that we could actually be proud of. You
Wheel of
know?
Fortune.
Yes.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
We have the choice. That's what the Wheel of Fortune is all about.
Yep.
What choices are you going to make coming up off of the 0 to 9 path in context to taking it from the fool to the hermit? You know,
Mm.
where are you going to take it? You know,
And to reap the benefits of the wheel of fortune, you need to cultivate the will of fortune. It
absolutely,
starts with
Woo!
that. Yeah.
absolutely.
Elaine, you nailed it with this, by the way. It's so exhausting playing both roles. This is everything, is that the men are not present. We talked about fatherless homes earlier, and the woman is forced out of survival. We've been on all this. This is so on point. And it's exhausting for the feminine. It's not that a woman can't do it. Many women out there are doing it, and I commend you because what's the other option, right? You're kind of forced in that position at this
Yeah,
point. You can't make him want to be more involved. But again, so it's not that you can't do it, it's that it's exhausting. Especially the women, the feminine aspect of this, to for a woman to be forced into a masculine role is just exhausting, and it makes you neurotic, right?
yeah,
This you don't want that kind of responsibility. You want to trust that your man's got it, and you can just let go of control and just live in the moment and bring joy and life and laughter to the home and
Mm.
not be in all of these like executive, oh, I got to make sure the rent's paid and I got to make sure this and that. And you constantly logistic minding. That's your left brain. It's exhausting for you. You want to just relax and trust and feel safe.
Yeah, of course it's exhausting. That's how anything in the opposition of nature, you're tapped into more of the involution, right? It's like the decaying force. So it drains your energy. It's not vitality where it's raising up. So yeah, it definitely has that effect. And I can relate to that in a lot of aspects, being a single dad.
Mm,
oh, absolutely, man. It can drain your life force if you let it.
Yeah.
Literally, because you're doing something that's not natural to you, you know.
mm. And I love, oh, go ahead, Will.
No, go for it.
I love this comment as well. This is something I say a lot. Females definitely have a lot of the power. It's how they use it and which one a male pays attention to will tell a lot. Well, I say there's a masculine power is not the same as feminine power. It's not to say women are not powerful. It's just that what is presented as power in our world, in our day and age, is typically taking form as the masculine form of power, and femininity is seen as weak and not powerful. But
Mm,
it's just different. A
mm,
woman doesn't need to act like a man to be powerful. She needs to step into her feminine self-worth and understand what her feminine power is. It's not to be the boss bitch that makes bank and handles shit and runs online businesses and is a coach and all these kind of things, all while being a single mother. The feminine power is the power to inspire the masculine, to nurture
Absolutely.
and to care and to bring that joy. The joy of life and existence is that Venus
Yes.
energy. The
Yep.
just the pure pleasure of being alive in this magical place that we forget sometimes. We think of it as a prison.
Yeah.
That's the power of the feminine. And that's very different from masculine power. Men don't have that same ability. And that's great. Again,
No.
I want this to be a celebration of our differences. How great it is that I don't need to be feminine. I can do what I'm good at and trust a woman to be feminine and to inspire me to be the best version of myself as a man. That's your power.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Man, well, we are 3 hours and 18 minutes in.
Solid.
Dude, so solid. I've absolutely enjoyed this so much. I think we've covered a lot of very important, powerful points. I think we kind of, this is a good place to wrap this up. And, a lot of this stuff we'll probably kind of revisit next week and the week after, because, it's not just about horse blinders about men and then women and this, like, it's all one big thing, right? And we're talking about the relationship, the relationship between those things, the communication and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to revisit these concepts because they apply to both, and we need to be able to see the big picture, holistic intelligence, looking at that from that higher perspective. Very crucial here. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of this. You guys have brought so many wonderful points and insights to this conversation. Thank you so much to everyone in the audience who's been active in the chat, adding many great points as well. And even those of you who are been passively listening, just your presence here is very valuable and much appreciated. Again, everyone, please give the video a like real quick. That really helps us out. If you did get value from this, consider subscribing, join the tribe, and click that bell so you're not relying on Facebook or YouTube to feed you good comment, because they're definitely suppressing stuff like this. I'm sure there's a whole list of buzzwords we used in this episode that are like no-nos that'll get us kind of shadow banned and stuff. But it is what it is, man. We got to just put the truth out there until they literally shut us up. I'm not going to stop. So, if I have to be only on Odyssey eventually someday, maybe so be it. But I'm going to use these platforms while I have access to them, while I can, until they literally, tape my mouth shut, and I'll adapt from there. But
there you go.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. This has been great. I appreciate you so much. Much love.
Yes.
Again, join us every week, every Saturday, noon Central, right here on the Wizard Factory. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Please share this with a friend. And until next week, be empowered, inspired, and encouraged. Bye.
All right.